Hey there, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I've put together a new collection of interesting stories, so whether you're here to relax, fall asleep, or just listen in the background, this should be a good one. Feel free to let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always interesting to see where everyone is tuning in from. Now, let's start with the first story. It is titled,
After my millionaire grandfather died and left me everything, my cheating ex-wife, who left me for her new lover, tried to sue me for the money. When I walked into the courtroom, my ex-wife rolled her eyes, but the judge froze. "Wait, the charges are against you?" he said. They never knew who I really was. Look, I've seen some ridiculous things in my 34 years on this planet. I've watched a guy try to microwave a burrito still wrapped in aluminum foil. I've witnessed someone parallel park for 20 minutes only to give up and take an Uber. And I once saw my college roommate attempt to iron a shirt while wearing it. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the moment I walked into courtroom 3B of the Philadelphia County Courthouse and locked eyes with my ex-wife, Miranda. The eye roll she gave me wasn't just some casual ugh. No, this was a full-body experience. Her eyes didn't just roll. They did a complete gymnastics routine, stuck the landing, and probably pulled a muscle on the way back down. I'm talking Olympic-level disdain here, folks. The kind of eye roll that comes with its own dramatic soundtrack and slow-motion replay. For a split second, I genuinely thought she might injure herself, like she'd somehow sprain a cornea or detach a retina from the sheer force of her contempt. Honestly, I almost started a slow clap right there in the middle of the courtroom. It was that impressive. She was sitting at the plaintiff's table all dolled up in some power suit that probably cost more than my first car. Her perfectly highlighted hair cascading over her shoulders like she was posing for a LinkedIn headshot. Next to her sat Trent. Yes, that Trent, the gym instructor with the IQ of a protein shake, looking like he borrowed his suit from his older brother's bar mitzvah 2007. The guy had so much hair gel in that you could probably see his reflection from space, and he was doing that thing where he flexed his jaw muscles to look intimidating. Spoiler alert, it wasn't working. But here's where it gets good. Judge Harold Reynolds, a man who'd been presiding over family court cases since before I was born, looked up from the case file on his bench. He adjusted his glasses, squinted at the papers, then looked directly at me, standing there in my only decent suit, the one I'd bought specifically for Grandpa Henry's funeral 3 months ago. The judge blinked once, then twice, like his brain was trying to reboot after encountering a critical error. His mouth opened slightly, closed, then opened again, and I swear I could actually hear the Windows shutdown sound playing in his head. "Wait a minute," Judge Reynolds said slowly, his voice carrying that particular tone of confusion mixed with growing amusement. "The charges here. These allegations, they're against you." He glanced down at the file again, flipped a page like maybe he'd missed something crucial, then looked back up at me with the expression of a man who just realized the punchline to a joke he'd heard 3 days ago. "Marcus Whitmore, you're the defendant they're claiming manipulated and exploited an elderly man." I couldn't help it. A smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. "That would be me, Your Honor." The thing is, Miranda thought she had this whole situation figured out. She'd done the math in her pretty little head, probably while getting a pedicure or doing hot yoga or whatever it is people do when they have too much time and too little self-awareness. In her version of reality, she was suing her broke ex-husband, the guy who used to fix air conditioning units and unclog toilets for a living. The maintenance engineer, as I generously called myself, for what she believed was her rightful share of my late grandfather's estate. She'd probably pictured me still living in that crappy studio apartment in South Philly, still driving my 2003 Honda Civic with the duct-taped passenger mirror, still microwaving ramen noodles for dinner 4 nights a week. What she didn't know, what her smug lawyer, Richard Pike, apparently failed to properly investigate, and what was about to make this the most entertaining morning I'd had in years, was that the maintenance engineer she'd divorced 3 years ago, the guy she'd left with nothing but a sticky note and a half-empty apartment, was now the sole heir to a $30 million estate. Yeah, you read that right. $30 million with an M. The kind of money that has accountants, investment portfolios, and causes distant relatives you've never met to suddenly remember your birthday. My grandfather, Henry Whitmore, had been a Philadelphia legend. Retired Superior Court judge, real estate mogul, the guy who owned half the commercial properties in Center City, and had more connections than Verizon. He was the kind of man who wore 3-piece suits to breakfast, read 3 newspapers before lunch, and could make grown lawyers cry during cross-examination. And he was the only person in my entire life who'd ever told me something that actually stuck. "Son, keep receipts on everyone who betrays you. Not for revenge, for clarity." Smart man. Scary smart. The kind of smart that makes you nervous until you realize he's on your side. So, There I stood in this wood-paneled courtroom that smelled like old law books and broken dreams, watching my ex-wife's carefully constructed fantasies start to crumble before her eyes. I could see her lawyer frantically whispering something to her, probably trying to figure out why the judge was looking at the case file like it was written in invisible ink. Miranda's perfectly painted face had gone from smugly confident to slightly concerned. Her Instagram-ready smile starting to crack around the edges. And Trent, poor dumb Trent, was just sitting there looking confused, which to be fair was pretty much his default setting. The guy probably thought estate me a type of car. I leaned slightly toward my own attorney, Lucas Shaw, a sharp guy who charged by the hour and was worth every penny, and caught Miranda's eye across the courtroom. She was staring at me now, and I could literally see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out why I looked so calm, why I wasn't sweating, why I seemed almost amused. That's when I couldn't resist. I gave her my best smile, the kind that doesn't quite reach your eyes. And then I shifted my gaze to Trent. He was adjusting his too-tight collar, his tan looking especially orange under the fluorescent courtroom lights. I leaned just a little bit closer to Lucas, but kept my voice just loud enough to carry across the aisle. "Nice suit, Trent," I said conversationally. "Really brings out your ambition. Quick question, though. Did she pay for that, or did you manage to buy it with my alimony money?" The effect was instantaneous and beautiful. Trent's face went from spray tan orange to something resembling a sunburned tomato. His jaw clenched and he half stood from his chair before Miranda grabbed his arm and yanked him back down, hissing something that I'm pretty sure wasn't courtroom appropriate. Her lawyer shot me a death glare that could have melted steel. But Judge Reynolds, oh man. Judge Reynolds tried to hide it. He really did. He coughed into his hand, turning slightly away from the courtroom, his shoulders shaking just a little bit. When he turned back, he was wearing that expression judges wear when they're trying very hard to maintain professional decorum while internally dying of laughter. "Mr. Whitmore," the judge said, his voice carefully controlled. "Perhaps we should begin these proceedings with a bit more decorum." "Of course, Your Honor," I replied, keeping my face perfectly innocent. "My apologies. I'm just excited to be here." Lucas elbowed me gently in the ribs, but I could see him fighting back a smile, too. Miranda's lawyer cleared his throat loudly and importantly, like he was about to deliver the Gettysburg Address. "Your Honor, if we could proceed with the preliminary." "Oh, we'll proceed," Judge Reynolds interrupted, leafing through the case file again. "But I have to say, Mr. Pike, this is one of the more interesting cases I've seen cross my bench in quite some time. And I've been doing this for 27 years. That's when I absolutely definitely knew that today was going to be a beautiful day in court. The kind of day you tell stories about later. The kind that makes you believe in karma and cosmic justice and all those things people post inspirational quotes about on Facebook." Miranda was still staring at me. Her eye makeup starting to look a little less perfect. A tiny furrow appearing between her perfectly microbladed eyebrows. I could practically hear her internal monologue. Why isn't he scared? Why isn't he panicking? What does he know that I don't? Everything, sweetheart. I know everything. And as the bailiff called the court to order, and Judge Reynolds prepared to officially begin proceedings, I settled into my chair, crossed my legs comfortably, and prepared to watch the show because that's what this was going to be, a show. And unlike the past 3 years of my life, for once, I wasn't the one being played. I was about to get my favorite kind of justice, the legal kind, served with a side of poetic irony and garnished with just a hint of "I told you so." It was going to be a very good day indeed. Okay, so before we get back to watching Miranda's world implode in that courtroom, we need to rewind the tape a bit because you can't fully appreciate the sweet irony of this situation without understanding how I ended up sitting on a $30 million fortune in the first place. Trust me, this backstory is worth it. It's got everything. Family drama, unexpected plot twists, and a funeral that looked like someone had accidentally sent invitations to the entire Eastern Seaboard power structure. 3 months before that beautiful courtroom showdown, my grandfather, Henry Whitmore, passed away in his sleep at the ripe old age of 87. And when I say he was sharp until the end, I mean the man could have outnegotiated a used car salesman while simultaneously solving a crossword puzzle and critiquing your life choices. 2 days before he died, he called me to discuss municipal bond yields and to tell me that my haircut made me look like I was auditioning for a boy band. That was Grandpa Henry. Brutally honest, scary, intelligent, and somehow both your biggest critic and your fiercest defender at the same time. The funeral was absolutely insane. I'm talking about a who's who of Philadelphia society and honestly half of Pennsylvania's political infrastructure. There were 3 state senators, 2 congressmen, at least a dozen Superior Court judges, all of whom looked genuinely sad, which tells you something about how respected he was. A collection of CEOs who probably had a combined net worth that could buy a small country and enough lawyers to staff every firm from here to Pittsburgh. The parking lot at the church looked like a luxury car dealership having a convention. Mercedes, BMWs, Teslas, and one absolutely ridiculous Bentley that belonged to some real estate developer who Grandpa had apparently destroyed in court back in the 90s, but who showed up anyway to pay respects because that's just the kind of legend Henry Whitmore was. Me, I stood there in my funeral suit, the same one I was wearing in that courtroom, by the way, because I'm practical like that. Shaking hands with people who kept saying things like, "Your grandfather was an extraordinary man and he spoke so highly of you and you must be so proud to carry on his legacy." And I was proud, genuinely, completely proud because unlike most of the people in that church, I actually knew him. Not the legend, not the retired judge, not the real estate mogul. I knew Henry, the guy who taught me to play chess when I was 7, who let me stay up late watching old westerns, who told me that integrity was the only currency that actually mattered in life. You know who wasn't there? Miranda. Obviously, she was probably somewhere tropical at that exact moment, posting Instagram stories about living her truth and doing yoga on a beach with Trent, who was undoubtedly wearing one of those tank tops that's cut so low you can practically see his belly button. She'd never met Grandpa Henry. Not once in our entire 5-year marriage. And that wasn't an accident. That was a choice. Her choice specifically. See, Miranda had always been too busy for family stuff. My family stuff. Anyway, her own family gatherings, those were non-negotiable. But when I'd invite her to Sunday dinners at Grandpa's house, suddenly she had a headache or a work thing or a friend's crisis that required immediate attention. After about the 10th excuse, Grandpa had looked at me over his reading glasses and said, "Son, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. You're currently on showing number 10. I'd laughed it off back then, made excuses for her, said she was just stressed with work. Grandpa had just shrugged and gone back to his newspaper, but I caught the look in his eye. He knew. He always knew. After the funeral service, after the burial, after the endless reception where I ate approximately 17 of those tiny sandwiches that taste like nothing but somehow cost a fortune, I sat down in the office of Bernard Castellano, Grandpa's attorney for the past 40 years. Bernie was old school Philadelphia legal establishment, 3-piece suit, pocket watch, the whole 9 yards. The kind of guy who still used a fountain pen and probably had strong opinions about proper shoe shining technique. I figured this would be quick. Maybe Grandpa had left me his chess set, the one we'd played on every Sunday for 20 years. Maybe his collection of vintage watches or his law books. Or perhaps that ridiculous painting of a ship that hung in his study that he'd always joked would be mine someday. Sentimental stuff, meaningful, but not life-changing. Bernie slid a folder across his mahogany desk, the kind that's so polished you can see your reflection in it, and said with absolutely no preamble whatsoever, "Congratulations, Mr. Whitmore. You now own everything." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what? Everything?" Bernie repeated, tapping the folder. "The house, the properties, the investment portfolio, the savings accounts, the stocks, the bonds, the whole estate. Your grandfather left it all to you. Total liquid and fixed assets come to approximately $30 million, give or take, depending on the market. There are some smaller bequests to charities and his housekeeper, but the bulk of the estate. We're talking about 97% of it goes to you." For a solid 10 seconds, I just stared at him. My brain had completely blue-screened. $30 million. $30 million. That's the kind of money where you stop checking price tags at the grocery store. That's accidentally leave a $100 bill in your jeans and forget about it. Money. That's your great-great-grandkids will still be arguing about it. Money. That's I don't lie. I finally managed to stammer out, which was super articulate of me. Bernie smiled, the kind of smile that suggested he'd been waiting for this moment and was thoroughly enjoying it. He opened the folder and pulled out a handwritten letter. I recognized Grandpa's distinctive scrawl immediately. All sharp angles and confident strokes. "He wanted you to read this," Bernie said, handing it over. My hands were actually shaking as I unfolded the letter. Grandpa's handwriting, still steady even at 87, filled the page. "Marcus, if you're reading this, I'm dead. Don't be sad. 87 years is a damn good run, and I got to see you become the man I always knew you could be. Here's the thing, son. You earned this inheritance. Not by being born into the family. Not by sucking up to me. Not by showing up at the end with flowers and fake tears. You earned it by having backbone. You showed up every Sunday for 20 years, even when you had better things to do. You called me every Wednesday evening, even when I know you were exhausted from work. You sat with me in the hospital during that pneumonia scare 3 years ago, and you never once asked about my will or my money. You came because you cared, and that's rarer than you think. Everyone else in this family sees me as a bank account with a pulse. You saw me as Henry. That's worth more than all the money I made in my entire life. So here's your inheritance. Everything I built, everything I saved, everything I invested. Use it wisely. Use it well. And remember who showed up when everyone else left. That matters. That's the real currency. Love, Grandpa. I had to set the letter down because my vision had gone blurry and I absolutely was not crying in front of Bernie Castellano. I was just having an allergic reaction to the leather chairs or something. Totally normal. Bernie, bless him, pretended to be very interested in organizing papers while I pulled myself together. When I finally looked up, he was holding out a glass of whiskey. The good stuff, probably older than I was. Your grandfather left me specific instructions to give you this the moment after you read the letter, Bernie said. He said you'd need it. I took the glass and downed it in one go. It burned in the best possible way. So what now? I asked, my voice only slightly. Bernie leaned back in his chair. Now? Now you're a very wealthy man, Marcus. You'll need to make some decisions about the properties, the investments, the foundation he'd been running. But that can wait. For now, just let it sink in. Let it sink in. Right. I was a millionaire multiple times over. Me, Marcus Whitmore, the guy who'd been eating cereal for dinner twice a week just 6 months ago because it was cheap and easy. The maintenance engineer who'd spent 5 years being told by his wife that he'd never amount to anything special. The grandson who just showed up because that's what you do for people you love. I drove home that night in my beat-up Honda Civic, which suddenly felt extremely ironic, and sat in my crappy studio apartment, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looked like Abraham Lincoln. And I laughed. I laughed until my sides hurt, until tears were streaming down my face, until my neighbor banged on the wall and yelled at me to keep it down. Because if only Grandpa Henry knew how absolutely, devastatingly perfect his timing was. If only he could see what was coming in 3 months. If only he knew that his letter, that beautiful, perfect letter about showing up and having backbone would be the most prophetic thing he'd ever written. The universe has a sense of humor after all. And apparently, it was on my side for once. So, there I was, 30 days into being secretly rich. And let me tell you, it's a weird experience. I hadn't told anyone yet. Not my coworkers, not my neighbors, definitely not the barista at the coffee shop who still gave me the struggling millennial discount without me asking. I was still living in my studio apartment with Abraham Lincoln on the ceiling, still driving my Honda with the janky side mirror, still buying the store brand everything at the grocery store because old habits die hard. And also because I genuinely couldn't process that I could now afford name brand cereal without checking my bank account first. Bernie had advised me to take it slow, figure out what I wanted to do with my life. Now that money wasn't a constant source of anxiety, so I kept going to work, kept fixing HVAC units and unclogging toilets, kept living my regular life while sitting on a fortune that would make most people's heads explode. It was kind of fun, actually, like being a superhero with a secret identity, except instead of fighting crime, I was just really good at replacing water heaters. I was in the middle of eating leftover Chinese food straight from the container. Living that glamorous millionaire lifestyle obviously when my phone rang. Lucas Shaw's name popped up on the screen and I answered with my mouth full of Lane because I'm classy like that. Marcus, Lucas said, and his tone made me stop chewing immediately. He sounded somewhere between amused and concerned, which is a very specific lawyer tone that usually means someone's done something spectacularly stupid. I need you to sit down. I'm already sitting, I said, swallowing quickly. What's wrong? Is it the estate? Did something happen with the properties? No, nothing like that. The estate is fine. It's just, he paused, and I could hear papers rustling on his end. I got served this morning with a lawsuit against you. I almost dropped my phone into my lane. What? Who's suing me for what? Your ex-wife. Time stopped. I mean, not literally, but you know that feeling when your brain just completely freezes and you can't process words anymore? Yeah, that happened. I sat there holding my phone, a noodle hanging from my chopsticks, my mouth opening and closing like a goldfish that had suddenly developed existential dread. I'm sorry, I finally managed. Did you just say Miranda is suing me? Miranda Coleman. My ex-wife Miranda, the woman who left me 3 years ago for a guy whose entire personality is protein powder. That's the one, Lucas confirmed. And I could hear the barely suppressed amusement in his voice. And wait, it gets better. She's suing you for fraud, undue influence, and elder exploitation. What? I actually shouted that, and my neighbor banged on the wall again. I lowered my voice to an aggressive whisper. For what? Fraud? What could I have possibly defrauded her of her Netflix password? Because she changed that when she left, so that ship has sailed. Lucas was definitely laughing now. She and Mr. Trent Davis are claiming that you manipulated your grandfather, Henry Whitmore, into leaving you his entire estate. They're alleging that you isolated him from his family, took advantage of his advanced age, and supposedly declining mental faculties, and essentially conned an elderly man out of $30 million. I sat there in stunned silence for a solid 15 seconds. Then I started laughing. Not a normal laugh, a hysterical, borderline unhinged laugh that probably confirmed to my neighbors that I'd finally lost it. "Let me get this straight," I said when I could finally breathe again. "Miranda, who never met my grandfather, who refused to attend a single family dinner in 5 years of marriage, who couldn't even be bothered to send a sympathy card when he died, is now claiming that I isolated him from his family. That appears to be the crux of their argument." Yes. His family. What family? Grandpa hadn't spoken to anyone except me since like 2001 because everyone else bored him to tears. His own son, my dad, moved to Arizona and calls once a year on Christmas. His brother died in 1998. Who exactly am I supposed to have isolated him from? The mailman. I'm just reading what the complaint says. Marcus and Trent. Trent is involved in this. The guy who thinks his state is a type of car is filing a lawsuit about a state law. He's listed as a co-plaintiff. Apparently, they're engaged now. So, he's claiming some kind of honestly, I'm not even sure what he's claiming. The legal argument is pretty thin. Actually, calling it thin is generous. It's basically transparent. I pinched the bridge of my nose trying to process this absolute insanity. When did she file this? It's dated 3 days ago. I got served this morning. 3 days ago, I repeated slowly. Lucas, 3 days ago, Miranda posted on Instagram about new beginnings with the love of my life. I know because my cousin sent me a screenshot with like 15 laughing emojis. She posted a picture of her and Trent on a boat with champagne with some caption about manifestation and living her best life. So, she filed a lawsuit claiming emotional damages and family trauma. The same week she posted vacation photos. Lucas said dryly, "That's certainly a choice." That's not a choice. That's evidence of a complete break from reality. I stood up, started pacing my tiny apartment, which took approximately 4 steps in any direction. How did she even find out about the inheritance? Public records? Probably. Estate filings are publicly accessible, and your grandfather's passing made the papers. Once his will went through probate, anyone could look it up if they knew where to look. So, she went digging. Appears that way. I laughed again, but this time it was the cold kind. The kind that comes when you realize someone you used to love has turned into someone you don't even recognize. She left me when I had nothing. Literally nothing. She walked out with a sticky note. Lucas, a sticky note that said, "You're a good man, but I need passion." Now, suddenly, she finds out I inherited money. And she's what? Crawling back, filing lawsuits. What's her endgame here? Best guess, she either wants a settlement to go away quietly, or she actually thinks she can convince a judge that she's entitled to a portion of your inheritance. Based on what legal principle, though, I regret my life choices clause. I've seen people try to win cases on less, Lucas admitted. But Marcus, between you and me, this is a garbage lawsuit. It's going to get tossed. She has no standing, no evidence. And from what you've told me about your relationship with your grandfather, she has absolutely no case whatsoever. So why is she doing this? Because people get weird about money, especially large amounts of money, and especially when they feel like they somehow deserve it. I thought about that for a moment about Miranda sitting in whatever overpriced apartment she and Trent were renting, scrolling through public records, seeing those numbers, doing the math, realizing that if she'd stuck around just a little bit longer, if she'd faked interest in my family for just a few more years, she could have been sitting on millions instead of splitting rent with a guy whose career peaked at fitness boot camp instructor. When's the first hearing? I asked. 2 weeks. Wednesday morning, 9 a.m. Judge Harold Reynolds presiding. Reynolds? I know that name. Wasn't he friends with Grandpa? Colleagues? Yes. They served on the bench together back in the 90s. I already checked. He doesn't have to recuse himself since he's not personally involved in the estate, but he definitely knew your grandfather professionally. A slow smile spread across my face. So Miranda is going to stand in front of a judge who actually knew Henry Whitmore and try to claim that I manipulated him. That does appear to be her strategy. Yes, Lucas. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I once watched Trent try to open a door that clearly said pull for a full minute. Lucas laughed. I'm not worried about the case, Marcus. It's frivolous, and any competent judge will see that immediately. I just wanted to give you a heads up that this is happening and to prepare yourself for seeing her in court." "Oh, I'm prepared," I said, and I meant it. Trust me, I'm very prepared. After I hung up, I sat back down on my couch and finished my lo mein, which had gone cold, but I ate it anyway because wasting food is a sin. And also, I was too distracted to care. I thought about Miranda and Trent, probably celebrating right now, probably convinced they'd found some brilliant loophole, some way to cash in on my good fortune. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly know, was that Grandpa Henry had prepared me for exactly this kind of situation. He'd warned me about people who only show up when there's something in it for them. He'd taught me to document everything, to keep records, to never assume that people wouldn't surprise you with their greed. I walked over to my closet and pulled out a box I'd been keeping since the divorce. Inside were 3 years' worth of receipts, text messages I'd backed up, emails, calendar entries. Every time Miranda had canceled on a family dinner. Every excuse she'd made. Every time she'd asked Grandpa for money and then ghosted him when he said no. Every screenshot of every social media post she'd made while claiming to be too overwhelmed to meet my family. Grandpa had told me, "Keep receipts on everyone who betrays you." Well, Miranda, I thought, setting the box on my kitchen counter. I kept every single one. 2 weeks suddenly felt very, very far away. Alright, so before we get to the absolute massacre that was about to happen in that courtroom, I need to give you the full backstory on my marriage to Miranda, because you can't truly appreciate the poetic justice of what's coming without understanding just how spectacularly she played herself. And trust me, this woman wrote, directed, and starred in her own downfall, and she doesn't even know the final act yet. I met Miranda Coleman 7 years ago at a coffee shop in Rittenhouse Square, back when I was still trying to convince myself that my computer repair business was going to take off any day now. Spoiler alert, it did not take off. In fact, it crashed and burned so hard I'm pretty sure the wreckage is still smoking somewhere. But anyway, I was sitting there with my laptop trying to figure out why Mrs. Henderson's desktop kept blue screening when this absolutely gorgeous woman sat down at the table next to me and ordered something complicated involving oat milk and 3 different syrups. She had that look, you know, the one where everything about her screamed I'm low maintenance, but you could tell she spent 2 hours getting ready. The messy bun that took 15 minutes to perfect. Then natural makeup that required 12 products. The yoga pants that cost more than my rent. But she smiled at me, commented on my vintage Phillies t-shirt. And somehow we ended up talking for 3 hours about absolutely nothing important. "I love that you're so passionate about helping people with their technology problems," she'd said, tilting her head in that way that probably worked on every guy she'd ever met. "It's so humble. You have such a beautiful, grounded spirit." Humble. Grounded. Looking back, those were red flags bigger than the ones they fly at the beach when there's a hurricane coming. But I was 27 and stupid, and she was paying attention to me. So I ignored every single warning sign my brain tried to send. Translation of what she actually meant. "I think you're a broke loser who will be easy to control and won't question me when I max out your credit cards." We dated for 6 months before I proposed, because apparently I was speedrunning bad decisions that year. The wedding was small. My family, her family, a few friends, and about 40 people on her side that I'd never met and would never see again. Grandpa Henry came, wore his best suit, shook my hand, and pulled me aside before the ceremony. "Son," he said quietly. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" "Of course," I'd said, confused. "I love her, Grandpa." He'd looked at me for a long moment, and I could see him choosing his words carefully. "Love is important, but pay attention to how someone treats people who can't do anything for them. That tells you who they really are." I'd laughed it off, told him he was being overprotective, promised him he'd love Miranda once he got to know her better. He just nodded, kissed me on the forehead like he used to when I was a kid, and said, "I hope you're right." Narrator voice, I was not right. The first year of marriage was fine, or at least I thought it was fine, which in retrospect means it definitely wasn't fine, and I was just oblivious. Miranda worked as a social media consultant, which as far as I could tell meant she took selfies and called it market research. I was still doing computer repair and had just picked up some maintenance work on the side to make ends meet, because surprise, fixing computers for old people who keep clicking on email scams doesn't actually pay very well. But Miranda had expensive taste. Designer purses, premium gym memberships, monthly spa appointments, a skincare routine that required more products than a CVS checkout line. And somehow, despite her consulting business, I was the one paying for all of it. "Babe, I need this moisturizer," she'd say, holding up a tiny jar that cost $140. "It's an investment in my skin health." "That's like a week of groceries," I'd point out. "Don't be cheap, Marcus. Self-care isn't selfish, right? Self-care. That's what we were calling burning through my paycheck before the bills were paid. Every Sunday, I'd go to Grandpa's house for dinner. It was our thing. Had been since I was a teenager. We'd play chess, argue about politics, watch whatever game was on, just hang out. And every Sunday, I'd invite Miranda. I can't this week, babe. I have a headache. I promised Chloe I'd help her with something. I'm so stressed with work. I just need to decompress. Your grandfather is kind of intimidating, you know. I just need more time. Excuse after excuse after excuse. For 5 years, she came to maybe 3 Sunday dinners total, and 2 of those were Christmas and Thanksgiving when she basically had no choice. She never called him, never asked about him, acted like my family was some kind of inconvenient obligation that interfered with her real life. Meanwhile, she expected me to attend every single one of her family events. Her mom's birthday, her dad's retirement party, her cousin's baby shower, her aunt's book club. I showed up to all of them, smiled, made small talk, pretended I enjoyed listening to her mother explain for the 15th time how Miranda could have been a model if she'd wanted to. Year 3 was when Trent entered the picture, though I didn't know it at the time. Miranda suddenly needed a gym membership to the fanciest fitness center in Philadelphia, the kind where they have eucalyptus-scented towels and water with cucumber slices. She started going every morning at 6 a.m., which should have been my first clue because Miranda had never voluntarily woken up before 9 in her entire life. I'm just really getting into fitness, she'd say, wearing matching workout sets that cost more than my car payment. It's important to prioritize health. She started talking about this amazing trainer who was really helping her reach her goals. Trent this, Trent that. Trent says high-intensity intervals are the key to metabolic health. Trent recommended this protein powder. Trent thinks I should try hot yoga. I'm not an idiot. I mean, clearly I was a bit of an idiot or I would have seen this coming. But even I started to notice that she was spending more time talking about her trainer than she was talking to me. She'd come home from the gym all energized and glowing, then barely acknowledge me for the rest of the day. Maybe you should work out with us sometime, she suggested once, which was hilarious because I was working 60-hour weeks fixing air conditioners and hauling equipment upstairs. I was getting plenty of exercise. Thanks. I'm good, I'd said. But maybe you could skip one session and come to Grandpa's for dinner this week. He's been asking about you. She'd rolled her eyes. Practice for the Olympic-level performance she'd given the courtroom 3 years later and said, Marcus, your grandfather barely knows I exist. Stop trying to guilt-trip me. That stung, mainly because it was partially true. Grandpa barely knew she existed because she'd never given him the chance to know her. Year 4 was when things really started falling apart. Miranda's consulting business somehow required more and more funding, but produced fewer and fewer results. She needed a new laptop, a ring light, a professional camera, editing software, a website, business cards made from recycled bamboo, or some nonsense. I was paying for everything, working 2 jobs, exhausted all the time, while she posted Instagram stories about building her empire and manifesting abundance. Meanwhile, my relationship with Grandpa was the only thing keeping me sane. Every Sunday, without fail, I'd show up. Sometimes I'd be so tired I could barely keep my eyes open, but I'd go anyway because that's what you do for people you love. We'd play chess. He won probably 70% of the time. And he'd ask me how I was really doing. Not the polite version, but the truth. Marriage is hard. I'd admit sometimes, but we're working on it. He'd nod, move his knight, and say something like, son, you can't work on a marriage alone. Takes 2 people showing up. I'd deflect, make excuses, change the subject, but he was right. He was always right. Year 5, Miranda's best friend, Chloe, let something slip at a barbecue. We were all a few drinks in, and she made a comment about how it must be nice that Miranda's finally found someone who matches her energy. What do you mean? I'd asked. Chloe's face had gone white. Oh, I just meant, you know, with her fitness journey and everything. But I knew in that moment, I absolutely knew. All those early morning gym sessions, all that talk about Trent, all the time she'd come home late because she lost track of time doing cardio. It wasn't cardio. Well, technically maybe it was, but not the kind that happens on a treadmill. I didn't confront her right away. I watched, paid attention, noticed things I'd been ignoring. The way she hit her phone screen, the way she'd smile at texts and then quickly delete them. The new lingerie that I never saw her wear around me. The excuses about being tired whenever I tried to initiate anything physical. One morning, I woke up to find a sticky note on the bathroom mirror. Not even a real conversation, not even the decency of a face-to-face breakup, just a yellow post. It note stuck next to the toothpaste holder. Marcus, you're a good man, but I need passion. I need someone who understands me on a deeper level. I'm moving out today while you're at work. I hope you find happiness. That was it. 5 years of marriage summarized in 4 sentences on a 3-inch square of paper. No explanation, no apology, nothing about the 5 years I'd supported her dreams while mine died on the vine. Nothing about the credit card debt she'd left me with. Nothing about the fact that she'd been cheating on me for at least a year. I called Grandpa. Didn't even say hello. Just she left. I'm sorry, son, he said quietly. Come over. Bring whatever you need. I stayed with him for 2 months while I got myself together, found a new apartment, started rebuilding my life. He never said, I told you so. Never lectured me. Just let me heal. And told me the same thing over and over. Don't chase people who run towards stupidity. Best advice I ever got. And now, 3 years later, here we were. Miranda had chosen Trent, chosen his abs over my reliability, chosen passion over partnership. And I'd chosen to move forward, to keep showing up for the people who mattered, to maintain my integrity even when it would have been easier to become bitter. The universe was about to reward one of those choices and punish the other. Karma, as it turns out, has perfect timing. So, there we were back in courtroom 3B, and let me tell you, the energy in that room was absolutely electric. You know that feeling you get right before something spectacular is about to happen. Like when you're watching a cooking competition and someone's soulé is clearly about to collapse. Or when you see someone confidently walking toward a glass door they think is open. That beautiful moment of anticipation before disaster strikes. Yeah, that's exactly what this felt like. Except I was the only one who knew the disaster was coming. Miranda and Trent sat at the plaintiff's table looking like they'd just won the lottery and were waiting for someone to hand them the oversized check. Miranda had gone full power woman with her outfit, a navy pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, hair blown out to perfection, makeup applied with the precision of someone who'd watched approximately 400 YouTube tutorials. She looked like she was about to give a TED talk on manifesting success through positive vibrations or whatever nonsense she was into these days. Trent, bless his heart, was wearing a suit that fit him about as well as I'd fit into a pair of skinny jeans. The shoulders were too tight, the pants were too short, and he kept tugging at his collar like it was personally attacking him. His hair was gelled within an inch of its life, giving him that wet look that guys think makes them look sophisticated, but actually makes them look like they just emerged from a swimming pool. He was also wearing cologne. I could smell it from across the room. Some aggressive scent that probably had a name like Alpha Predator or Extreme Masculine Force. Their lawyer, Richard Pike, was exactly what you'd picture when you think of a sleazy attorney who advertises on bus benches. Mid-50s spray tan that was just a shade too orange, teeth so white they were practically glowing, in a suit that screamed I peaked in 1997 and I'm still coasting on that energy. He had one of those faces that's permanently set to smug, like he was constantly thinking about how clever he was even when he absolutely wasn't. Lucas leaned over to me as we watched Pike dramatically arrange his papers on the table, making a big show of everything like he was preparing to argue in front of the Supreme Court instead of a routine family court hearing. $20 says he opens with a quote, Lucas whispered. No bet, I whispered back. Guys like that always open with a quote. Probably something about justice or truth that he found on brainyquote.com. Judge Reynolds entered and we all stood. He settled into his chair, adjusted his glasses, and surveyed the courtroom with the expression of a man who'd seen every possible variation of human stupidity and was perpetually unimpressed by all of it. His eyes lingered on me for just a moment, and I swear I saw the tiniest hint of recognition. He'd known Grandpa. He knew what kind of man Henry Whitmore was. This was already not going to go well for Miranda, and she had absolutely no idea. Be seated, Judge Reynolds said. Let's begin. Mr. Pike, I understand you're representing the plaintiffs. Pike stood up so fast I'm surprised he didn't give himself whiplash. He buttoned his jacket, which didn't need buttoning, straightened his tie, which didn't need straightening, and cleared his throat with the kind of dramatic flair usually reserved for Shakespeare in the Park. Yes, Your Honor, I am. And if I may, I'd like to begin by reminding this courtroom that we are here today because justice, as the great Martin Luther King Jr. once said as I leaned over to Lucas, called it what love looks like in public, and my clients, Your Honor, have been denied justice. They have been victimized by a calculated manipulative scheme designed to exploit an elderly man in his most vulnerable moments. I had to physically bite my tongue to keep from laughing. Grandpa Henry vulnerable. The man had literally negotiated a real estate deal from his hospital bed during that pneumonia scare. He'd once made a lawyer cry during a deposition just by raising one eyebrow. Calling him vulnerable was like calling a great white shark cuddly. Pike was on a roll now, pacing in front of the judge's bench like he was performing for an invisible audience. Your Honor, my client, Miss Miranda Coleman, was married to the defendant for 5 years. 5 years of devotion, of partnership, of building a life together. And during that time, the defendant systematically isolated his grandfather from his family, from his loved ones, from anyone who might question his growing influence over the elderly man's affairs. Judge Reynolds was writing something down, his expression completely neutral. I couldn't tell if he was taking actual notes or just doodling to maintain his sanity. The defendant, Pike continued, and I noticed he was very carefully not using my name. Probably some lawyer trick to dehumanize me. Used his position as the primary caregiver. Objection, Lucas said calmly, not even standing up. Mr. Whitmore was never his grandfather's primary caregiver. Henry Whitmore lived independently in his own home with occasional assistance from a part-time housekeeper until 2 weeks before his death. Sustained, Judge Reynolds said, Mr. Pike, stick to facts that are actually in evidence. Pike's jaw tightened, but he recovered quickly. Very well. The defendant maintained an unusually close relationship with his grandfather, visiting him weekly. Weekly visits with a family member are unusual. Judge Reynolds interrupted, looking up from his notes. I must have missed that memo. A few people in the gallery, mostly court staff and a couple of lawyers waiting for other cases, snickered. Pike's face was turning red, which clashed spectacularly with his orange spray tan, creating a color palette that can only be described as Halloween nightmare. What I mean, Your Honor, is that the defendant leveraged this relationship to gain undue influence over his grandfather's estate planning. He deliberately excluded Ms. Coleman from family gatherings, prevented her from forming a relationship with Mr. Henry Whitmore and ultimately manipulated the elderly man into leaving him the entire $30 million estate. Objection, Lucas said, this time standing up. Your Honor, the plaintiff was never excluded from anything. In fact, Mr. Marcus Whitmore has documentation showing repeated invitations to family dinners, all of which the plaintiff declined. We'll get to evidence in due course, Judge Reynolds said. Mr. Pike, do you have anything else for your opening statement, or are we done with the theatrical portion of the morning? I love this judge already. Pike, clearly flustered that his dramatic performance wasn't having the desired effect, wrapped up quickly. Your Honor, we will prove that the defendant is not entitled to this inheritance, that it was obtained through fraud and manipulation, and that my clients deserve compensation for the emotional and financial damages they have suffered. He sat down and Miranda reached over to squeeze his arm, giving him an encouraging smile like he'd just delivered the Gettysburg Address instead of a barely coherent conspiracy theory. Then it was Miranda's turn to testify. And oh boy, this was where things got really entertaining. She took the stand wearing an expression of practiced sadness, the kind you see in those pharmaceutical commercials where they're trying to sell you antidepressants. She placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. Irony was working overtime today and settled into the witness chair like she was preparing for a magazine interview about overcoming adversity. Pike started with softball questions. How long were you married? 5 years. Did you love the defendant? Very much. How would you describe your relationship with his family? I tried so hard to be part of his family, but Marcus, he made it very difficult. I nearly choked. Lucas put a hand on my arm, a silent reminder to stay calm and let them dig their own grave. Can you elaborate on that? Pike asked, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. Miranda took a deep breath. And I swear to God, she actually managed to make her eyes well up. Or had she learned to cry on command? Was there a class, a YouTube tutorial? Marcus was very protective of his grandfather, almost possessive. Whenever I suggested visiting him, Marcus would make excuses. He said his grandfather was tired or busy or not feeling well. He made me feel like I wasn't welcome. This was amazing. She was literally rewriting history in real time and she was doing it under oath. And how did this make you feel? Pike asked. Because apparently we were in therapy now instead of a courtroom. Excluded. Hurt. Like I wasn't good enough to be part of his family. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Oscar worthy. Honestly, I just wanted to know his grandfather. I wanted to be a good granddaughter-in-law. But Marcus kept me at a distance. And do you believe this was intentional? I do. Now looking back, I realize he was isolating his grandfather so that he could manipulate him without anyone questioning it. He turned Henry against me against everyone. So that when it came time to write the will, there was no one left to inherit except Marcus. The way she said Grandpa's first name like they'd been close, like she had any right to use it familiarly made my blood boil. She'd never earned that right. She'd never even tried. Pike nodded solemnly. And during your marriage, did the defendant ever discuss his grandfather's finances with you? All the time. He was obsessed with the idea that his grandfather was wealthy. He'd talk about the properties, the investments, what everything might be worth someday. It was uncomfortable, honestly, like he was waiting for his grandfather to die. I felt Lucas tense beside me. That was a dangerous accusation, the kind that could actually do damage if a jury believed it. But this wasn't a jury trial. It was just Judge Reynolds, and he was watching Miranda with the expression of someone listening to a sales pitch for a timeshare. No further questions, Pike said, sitting down with a satisfied smile. Now came the fun part. Lucas stood up, took his time walking to the podium, and smiled pleasantly at Miranda. She smiled back, probably thinking she'd nailed her performance, and this was just a formality. Miss Coleman, Lucas began, his voice friendly and conversational. You testified that you wanted to visit Mr. Henry Whitmore, but that my client prevented you from doing so. Is that correct? Yes, that's right. And you said this happened frequently throughout your 5-year marriage. Yes. Lucas nodded like this was all making perfect sense. So just to be clear, you're saying that you actively wanted to spend time with your husband's elderly grandfather to build a relationship with him, but you were prevented from doing so. Exactly. Interesting. Lucas picked up a piece of paper from his table. Your Honor, I'd like to submit Exhibit A into evidence. This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. Lucas stood there holding Exhibit A like it was the Holy Grail, and I could see Miranda's confidence starting to crack just a little bit around the edges. Her smile was still plastered on, but there was something in her eyes now, a tiny flicker of uncertainty, like she was suddenly remembering that actions have consequences and lies have receipts. Miss Coleman. Lucas continued in that same pleasant conversational tone that somehow made everything he said sound more devastating. Before we get to this exhibit, I just want to clarify something. You said you've been with Mr. Trent Davis since your fitness boot camp. When exactly did you start attending that boot camp? Miranda blinked, clearly not expecting that question. I'm not sure of the exact date. Let me help you remember. According to your own Instagram posts, which are public, by the way, you posted your first photo at Elite Fitness Philadelphia on March 15, 4 years ago. Does that sound right? I suppose so. Yes. And you filed for divorce from my client on July 22, 3 years ago. Correct? Yes. So, that's roughly 16 months between when you met Mr. Davis and when you left my client. Does that timeline sound accurate? You could see the math happening behind her eyes. See her trying to figure out where this was going and how bad it was going to be. I guess so, but I don't see what that has to. We'll get there, Lucas said smoothly. Now, you testified that you wanted to visit Mr. Henry Whitmore, but my client prevented you. I'm holding here a copy of text message exchanges between you and Mr. Marcus Whitmore. These are from your phone records which we were able to subpoena. May I approach, Your Honor? Judge Reynolds nodded and Lucas handed copies to the judge to Pike and kept one for himself. I watched Miranda's face go from tan to pale in about 3 seconds flat. She knew what was in those texts. She knew exactly what was coming. Let me read a few of these aloud if I may. Lucas said, this is from September 10th, 6 years ago. My client texts you. Grandpa asked if you wanted to come to dinner Sunday. Says he makes the best lasagna in Philadelphia and wants to prove it to you. Your response, can't babe getting my hair done. Tell him rain check. Miranda shifted in her seat. I was busy that day. Oh, we have more. Lucas interrupted cheerfully. October 3rd, same year. My client. Grandpa's birthday dinner this Sunday at 6. Would mean a lot if you came. Your response? Birthday dinners are so boring. Can we just send a card? A few people in the gallery gasped. Even Trent looked uncomfortable, which was impressive because I didn't think he had the emotional range to feel secondhand embarrassment. Lucas flipped a page. November 20th. My client, Thanksgiving at Grandpa's. He's really looking forward to meeting you. Your response? Do we have to? I already committed to my family's thing. Those texts are out of context, Miranda said, her voice rising slightly. You can't just context. Lucas raised an eyebrow. Let's talk about context, then. Your Honor, I have here a complete record of every invitation my client extended to Miss Coleman over their 5-year marriage. In total, he invited her to 53 Sunday dinners, 7 holidays for birthdays, and 1 hospital visit when Mr. Whitmore had pneumonia. She attended 3 Sunday dinners, 2 of which were mandatory holidays, and 0 of everything else. Judge Reynolds was reading through the text messages, and his expression had gone from neutral to something resembling barely controlled annoyance. Miss Coleman, these messages appear to directly contradict your earlier testimony. I can explain, Miranda started. But Lucas wasn't done. Actually, Your Honor, it gets better or worse, depending on your perspective. May I present Exhibit B? Oh man, this was the good stuff. Lucas pulled out a stack of printouts that looked like they'd come from social media, and I knew exactly what they were because I'd helped him compile them. Every single Instagram post, Facebook check-in, and Twitter update Miranda had made during times when she'd claimed to be too busy or too tired to visit Grandpa. This is from the same day as that September 10th text, Lucas said, holding up a printout. The day Miss Coleman said she couldn't come to dinner because she was getting her hair done. Here's her Instagram post from that evening. Girls' night at Coda. Best cocktails in the city. Complete with a photo of her at a bar with 6 friends. Timestamp 7:45 p.m. Miranda's lawyer jumped up. Objection. This is this social media stalking? It's publicly available information, Lucas said calmly. Miss Coleman chose to post these photos publicly. I'm simply providing evidence that contradicts her testimony. Overruled, Judge Reynolds said. And he actually sounded interested now. Continue, Mr. Shaw. Lucas went through post after post, each one more damning than the last. The time she said she had a migraine, but posted pictures from a wine tasting. The time she claimed to be working on a major project, but checked into a spa for a full day of treatments. The Thanksgiving she skipped because of her family's thing that turned out to be a weekend trip to Miami with Trent. Yeah, that one raised some eyebrows. And here's my personal favorite, Lucas said, holding up another printout. This is from April 12, 2 years ago. My client invited Ms. Coleman to the hospital because his grandfather had pneumonia and the doctors weren't sure he'd make it through the night. Her response, and I quote, "That's really sad, but I can't handle hospital vibes right now. Send him my love." The courtroom was dead silent. Even the stenographer had stopped typing and was just staring at Miranda with open disgust. That same night, Lucas continued, Miss Coleman posted this photo to Instagram, "Date night with my king," featuring her and Mr. Davis at an expensive steakhouse. My client was at the hospital holding his grandfather's hand, thinking he might die, and Miss Coleman was taking selfies with her personal trainer. That's enough, Pike shouted, standing up so fast his chair rolled backward. Your Honor, this is character assassination. None of this is relevant, too. It's extremely relevant. Lucas shot back. The plaintiff claims she was excluded from the family and prevented from forming a relationship with Mr. Whitmore. I'm proving that she actively chose not to participate repeatedly and consistently for years. You can't claim someone isolated you from a relationship you never wanted in the first place. Judge Reynolds held up a hand. Mr. Pike, sit down. The objection is overruled. Mr. Shaw, proceed. Miranda was crying now, but these weren't the pretty controlled tears from earlier. These were real tears, mascara running, face-crumpling tears of someone who'd just realized they'd been caught in a massive lie under oath. Lucas walked back to our table, picked up another folder, and returned to the podium. Now, Miss Coleman, let's talk about your relationship with Mr. Trent Davis. You testified that you've known him for 4 years, correct? Yes, she whispered. And when did your romantic relationship with him begin? After my divorce. After. Are you sure about that? Silence. Because I have here screenshots from a backup Instagram account you maintained under the username Fit Queen Adventures. Private account. Only 47 followers. But one of those followers was your friend Chloe, who was very cooperative when we explained this was for a legal proceeding. Miranda looked like she was going to throw up. Trent had gone completely white. His spray tea the only thing giving him any color. Lucas held up printout after printout. Miranda and Trent at the gym kissing in the parking lot. Dated 8 months before the divorce. Miranda and Trent at a hotel captioned weekend getaway with my person dated 6 months before the divorce. Miranda and Trent at the beach. Clearly couple. Why? Dated 4 months before the divorce. So, let me ask you again, Miss Coleman, and remember you're under oath, Lucas said quietly. When did your romantic relationship with Mr. Davis begin? She couldn't speak. She literally couldn't form words. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Your Honor, Lucas said. I think the evidence speaks for itself. The plaintiff committed perjury when she claimed to want a relationship with Mr. Whitmore. She committed perjury when she claimed my client isolated her. And she just committed perjury when she claimed her relationship with Mr. Davis began after the divorce. Everything about this case is based on lies. I have more, Lucas said. And I loved how calm he sounded, like he was ordering coffee instead of systematically destroying someone's credibility. Miss Coleman, do you remember asking Mr. Henry Whitmore for money? I never, Miranda started. Exhibit C, Lucas said, holding up more papers. Text messages between Ms. Coleman and Mr. Henry Whitmore. The phone number is confirmed to be his. These messages show Ms. Coleman reaching out to Mr. Whitmore directly, bypassing my client entirely on 6 separate occasions. Let me read one. Hi, Henry. Marcus talks about you all the time. I'm starting a skincare line and looking for investors. Would love to chat about opportunities. Judge Reynolds looked up sharply. She contacted him directly asking for money. Multiple times, Your Honor. And each time Mr. Whitmore politely declined, and each time she stopped responding to his messages. He invited her to lunch 3 times after these exchanges. She never responded. He invited her to Christmas dinner. No response. The only time Miss Coleman showed any interest in communicating with Mr. Whitmore was when she wanted financial backing. This is absurd. Pike finally found his voice. These messages could be there authenticated, Lucas said flatly. Phone records, timestamps, metadata, everything. Would you like me to call in a digital forensics expert to testify? Because I brought one and he's waiting outside. Pike sat down defeated. Lucas turned back to Miranda. So, just to summarize, you never wanted a relationship with Mr. Whitmore. You repeatedly declined invitations. You were cheating on my client for at least a year before the divorce. You only contacted Mr. Whitmore when you wanted money, and you're now claiming you deserve part of an inheritance from a man you couldn't be bothered to visit, even once when he was dying. Is that accurate? Miranda was full-on sobbing now. We needed. It's not fair that Marcus gets everything. Life isn't fair, Miss Coleman. Judge Reynolds said coldly. But the law is, and the law says you have no claim to this estate. The judge looked at Pike with an expression that could freeze hell. Counselor, is there anything else or are we done wasting the court's time? Pike stood up weakly. No, Your Honor. Good, because I have some things to say. After watching Lucas absolutely demolish Miranda's entire case with the legal equivalent of a tactical nuke, Judge Reynolds called a 15-minute recess. I think he needed time to compose himself and figure out how to professionally express what probably translated to, "Are you freaking kidding me with this nonsense?" Improper legal language. Miranda practically ran out of the courtroom, Trent following behind her like a confused golden retriever who just realized his owner was actually terrible. Pike gathered his papers with the energy of a man contemplating early retirement and perhaps a career change to something less soul-crushing, like being a DMV employee or a phone company customer service representative. Lucas and I stayed seated. He was making notes, completely calm, while I was trying to process the fact that I just watched my ex-wife commit perjury multiple times and then get caught in spectacular fashion. That went well, Lucas said without looking up from his legal pad. That was beautiful, I replied. I mean, I knew we had the evidence, but watching you actually use it, that was like watching a master chef work, except instead of food, you were serving justice with a side of humiliation. Wait until you testify, Lucas said. That's when we really drive it home. When we reconvened, the energy in the courtroom had completely shifted. Miranda looked like she'd been crying in the bathroom. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes were red, and she'd lost that artificial confidence she'd walked in with. Trent looked like he was seriously reconsidering his life choices, which to be fair, he should have been doing for the past 4 years. Pike looked like he wanted to be literally anywhere else on the planet. Judge Reynolds settled back into his seat and looked directly at Lucas. Mr. Shaw, does the defense wish to call any witnesses? Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Marcus Whitmore. This was it. My moment to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, which was going to be way more satisfying than I'd imagined. I stood up, walked to the witness stand, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore the oath. The same oath Miranda had sworn about 30 minutes ago before lying her face off. The difference was I actually meant it. Lucas started with the basics. Mr. Whitmore, can you tell the court about your relationship with your grandfather, Henry Whitmore? I took a deep breath and looked directly at Judge Reynolds. Not at Miranda, not at her lawyer, just at the judge who'd known Grandpa and would understand what I was about to say. My grandfather raised me. I began. My parents got divorced when I was 12, and neither of them really had their act together enough to be full-time parents. Dad moved to Arizona. Mom was dealing with her own stuff, and Grandpa just stepped up. He didn't have to. He was already in his 60s, already retired, could have been playing golf or traveling or doing whatever retired judges do, but he took me in, made sure I did my homework, taught me how to be a decent human being. And did that relationship continue into your adulthood? Lucas asked. Every single week, Sunday dinners were our thing. We'd play chess. He beat me probably 70% of the time, even when he was 86. We'd watch whatever game was on. We talk about everything from politics to philosophy to why the Phillies can never seem to get their act together. He was my best friend, honestly. The one person I could always count on to tell me the truth, even when I didn't want to hear it. And did you invite your ex-wife, Miss Coleman, to these dinners? Every single time for 5 years, I invited her. Every Sunday, I'd say, Grandpa wants us to come over. And she'd have an excuse. She was tired. She had plans. She had a headache. She had to work on her business. After the first year, Grandpa stopped asking if she was coming. He'd just set 2 places at the table instead of 3. Did that bother him? I paused, remembering. He never said it out loud. But yeah, I think it did. Grandpa was old school. Family was everything to him. The fact that my wife didn't care enough to show up, didn't care enough to even try to know him, I think that hurt. But he never complained. He just accepted it and moved on. Lucas nodded. Now, Miss Coleman testified that you prevented her from visiting your grandfather. Is that true? No, that's a complete lie. I begged her to come. I told her how much it would mean to him, how much it would mean to me. She just didn't care. And honestly, after a while, I stopped pushing because I realized Grandpa deserved better than someone who was only showing up because she felt obligated. Did you ever discuss your grandfather's wealth with Miss Coleman? This was important and I wanted to get it right. Never in the way she described. Yeah, I knew Grandpa had money. He owned properties. He'd been successful. It wasn't a secret. But I never sat around calculating what I might inherit someday. That's disgusting. The thought never even crossed my mind because I wasn't spending time with him for his money. I was spending time with him because I loved him. I saw Miranda look down at her hands. Good. She should feel ashamed. When did you learn about the full extent of your grandfather's estate? Lucas asked. At the reading of his will about 3 hours after his funeral, I thought I was going to get his chest set, maybe his watch. When the lawyer told me I was inheriting $30 million, I literally thought it was a mistake. I asked him to repeat it 3 times because I couldn't process it. And what was your reaction? I smiled, remembering that surreal moment in Bernie's office. Honestly, after the shock wore off, I laughed because 3 months earlier, Miranda had left me thinking I was a broke maintenance worker with no prospects. She left me for a guy with abs and no ambition because she thought that was a better bet. And then Grandpa left me everything, and I realized the universe has a sense of humor after all. A few people in the gallery chuckled. Even Judge Reynolds cracked a tiny smile. Did your grandfather have any relationship with Miss Coleman? Lucas asked. He tried. After the text messages, she sent him asking for money, which, by the way, I didn't know about until we pulled phone records for this case. He invited her to lunch 3 separate times. She never responded. He invited her to Christmas dinner 2 years in a row. Nothing. The only time she reached out to him was when she wanted him to invest in her skincare line, which I'm pretty sure never actually existed beyond some Pinterest boards and wishful thinking. And how did he feel about that? He told me, son, people who only call when they need something aren't family, they're salespeople. He wasn't angry about it, just disappointed. He'd seen enough people in his life try to use him that it didn't surprise him anymore. But I know it hurt him that my wife, the person I'd chosen to build a life with, couldn't even pretend to care about him unless there was money involved. Lucas walked back to his table and picked up a folder I recognized. This was the good stuff. The evidence that was going to seal this case shut tighter than a pickle jar. Mr. Whitmore, did your grandfather leave any instructions regarding his estate and his reasoning for his choices? He left a letter for me to read after he died. And what did that letter say? I pulled out the copy I'd been carrying in my jacket pocket, the one I'd read probably 50 times since that day in Bernie's office. My hands shook slightly as I unfolded it. He wrote, "You earned this inheritance not by being born into the family, not by sucking up to me, not by showing up at the end with flowers and fake tears. You earned it by having backbone. You showed up every Sunday for 20 years, even when you had better things to do. You called me every Wednesday evening, even when I know you were exhausted from work. You sat with me in the hospital during that pneumonia scare 3 years ago, and you never once asked about my will or my money. You came because you cared, and that's rarer than you think." My voice cracked a little, but I kept reading. "Everyone else in this family sees me as a bank account with a pulse. You saw me as Henry. That's worth more than all the money I made in my entire life. So, here's your inheritance. Everything I built, everything I saved, everything I invested. Use it wisely. Use it well. And remember who showed up when everyone else left." The courtroom was completely silent. I looked up and saw that even the stenographer had tears in her eyes. "That's the kind of man my grandfather was," I said. "He didn't leave me his money because I manipulated him or because I isolated him. He left it to me because I loved him, because I showed up. Because when he was sick and dying, I was the one holding his hand, not out there posting Instagram stories about living my best life." I looked directly at Miranda for the first time since I'd taken the stand. She was crying again, but this time I didn't feel sorry for her. Not even a little bit. She had 5 years to know him. I said 5 years to be part of our family. 5 years to show up for Sunday dinner or call him on his birthday or just ask how he was doing. She chose not to. And now she's mad that she doesn't get to cash in on a relationship she never wanted in the first place. That's not how inheritance works. That's not how family works. That's not how anything works. Lucas let that hang in the air for a moment before asking his final question. If you could say anything to your grandfather now, what would it be? I smiled, thinking about all those Sunday dinners, all those chess games, all those conversations. I'd say, thank you. Thank you for teaching me that integrity matters more than money. Thank you for showing me what real family looks like. Thank you for loving me even when I made stupid decisions like marrying someone who didn't deserve to know you. And thank you for being wise enough to leave your fortune to someone who loved you for who you were, not what you had. No further questions, Your Honor. Pike stood up for cross-examination, but his heart clearly wasn't in it anymore. He asked a few half-hearted questions about whether I'd known about the estate planning, whether Grandpa had ever seemed confused or easily influenced, whether I'd pressured him in any way. I answered honestly, no, and absolutely not. After about 5 minutes of getting nowhere, Pike sat down, looking defeated. Judge Reynolds leaned back in his chair, removed his glasses, and rubbed his eyes like he'd just witnessed something that had physically exhausted him. When he looked up, his expression was somewhere between disappointed and disgusted. I knew Henry Whitmore, the judge said quietly. Not well, but I knew him. We served on the bench together for several years, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that Henry Whitmore was one of the sharpest, most perceptive men I've ever met. The idea that anyone could manipulate him into doing anything he didn't want to do is laughable. He looked at Miranda with an expression that could have frozen nitrogen. Miss Coleman, I've been a judge for 27 years. I've seen every kind of case, every kind of claim, every kind of person. And this is one of the most frivolous, baseless lawsuits I've ever had the misfortune of presiding over. Oh, this was about to be good. Judge Reynolds adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. The kind of sound that meant someone was about to get absolutely destroyed in the most professional way possible. After reviewing the evidence presented today, he began, his voice carrying that particular tone of judicial authority mixed with barely concealed irritation. I find that the plaintiff's case is without merit. The evidence clearly shows that Mr. Marcus Whitmore maintained a consistent loving relationship with his grandfather for decades. The plaintiffs, however, demonstrated interest only when financial gain was involved. Miranda's face crumpled. Trent looked confused, like he was still trying to figure out what without merit meant. Miss Coleman, your testimony was contradicted by your own text messages, social media posts, and phone records. You committed perjury multiple times on this stand. Not only is your case dismissed with prejudice, meaning you cannot refile, but you will also be responsible for paying Mr. Whitmore's legal fees, which I imagine are substantial. Pike tried to stand. Your Honor, if we could sit down, Mr. Pike. I'm not finished. 3 weeks after the courtroom victory, Mrs. Henderson, Grandpa's elderly neighbor, showed up at my door holding a weathered envelope. Henry gave this to me years ago, she said softly. Told me to give it to you when the time was right. I think now's the time. Inside were letters Grandpa had written but never sent. My hands trembled as I read his elegant handwriting. Marcus, if she ever tries to come back, remember, forgiveness doesn't mean stupidity. You can forgive someone and still keep them out of your life. Another one read, love is showing up. You did. She didn't. That's all that matters. I framed that second letter and hung it above my desk in my new office. Yes, I finally moved out of that studio apartment. I took Grandpa's advice seriously, invested wisely, donated a chunk to veteran scholarships in his name, and started my own law firm. I called it Whitmore and Witt. The Witt part was intentional, and Grandpa would have loved it. 5 years later, life had become something I never thought possible during those dark days of eating ramen in my studio apartment with Abraham Lincoln staring down at me from the ceiling. The law firm was thriving beyond my wildest expectations. With 3 partners, 12 associates, and a reputation for taking cases that other firms wouldn't touch, we specialized in representing people who'd been betrayed, underestimated, or screwed over by someone they trusted. Turns out, there's no shortage of that particular brand of human garbage in the world, which meant business was unfortunately booming. I'd also gotten remarried, which surprised everyone, including myself. Her name was Sarah and she was everything Miranda wasn't. She was a high school English teacher who drove a sensible Toyota, packed her own lunches and thought manifesting abundance was something you did by working hard and being a decent person. Our first date was at a diner and when the check came, she insisted on splitting it. I knew right then I was going to marry her. We had a small wedding, family, close friends, and yes, I invited her to meet everyone in my life before I proposed because I'd learned that lesson the hard way. She got along with everyone because she was genuine, kind, and actually showed up when she said she would. Revolutionary concept. We lived in a beautiful house in the suburbs. Nothing too flashy because neither of us needed to prove anything to anyone. We had a dog named Chester who was dumb as a box of rocks, but had more loyalty in his furry body than Miranda had in her entire existence. Life was good, better than good. Life was exactly what Grandpa had wanted for me. Stable, happy, and built on a foundation of actual integrity rather than Instagram filters and protein shake philosophies. Then one Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from the mayor's office. Philadelphia was dedicating a new courthouse and they wanted to name it after Grandpa, the Henry Whitmore Justice Center. They asked if I'd speak at the dedication ceremony and obviously I said yes because how do you say no to honoring the man who gave you everything, including the wisdom to recognize trash disguised as treasure? The day of the dedication was perfect. Clear blue sky, crisp autumn air, the kind of day that makes you believe the universe occasionally gets things right. The new courthouse was beautiful, all glass and steel and modern architecture with Grandpa's name carved in stone above the entrance. Inside the main lobby hung a massive portrait of him in his judicial robes, looking exactly how I remembered him. Intelligent, dignified, and with just a hint of amusement in his eyes like he knew something you didn't. Hundreds of people showed up. Judges, lawyers, politicians, former clerks, people whose lives Grandpa had touched over his 8 decades of being awesome. I stood at the podium looking out at the crowd and felt Sarah squeeze my hand before I stepped up to speak. My grandfather, Henry Whitmore, taught me 2 fundamental things. I began, my voice echoing through the marble lobby. First, always tell the truth, even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient, because lies have a way of catching up to you, usually in the most spectacular fashion possible. The crowd chuckled, and I saw several judges nodding knowingly. And second, I continued, unable to resist. Never date anyone who hashtags boss babe unironically. That's just asking for trouble. The laughter was genuine this time, the kind that comes from recognizing universal truth. Wrapped in humor. Sarah was shaking her head but smiling. In all seriousness, I said, my tone shifting. Grandpa taught me that character isn't what you do when people are watching. It's what you do when no one's looking. When there's no reward, when the only person who knows is you. He taught me that showing up matters, that consistency matters, that loving people isn't about grand gestures or social media posts. It's about being there week after week, year after year. Whether it's convenient or not. I looked up at his portrait and I swear those painted eyes were twinkling. He left me more than money. He left me a blueprint for how to be a decent human being in a world that doesn't always reward decency. He showed me that integrity is the only currency that actually appreciates over time. And he proved that the people who show up when you have nothing are worth more than all the people who show up when you have everything. I paused, gathering my thoughts for the final point I wanted to make. 5 years ago, I stood in a courtroom and watched someone try to claim they deserved a piece of his legacy without ever earning it. They thought family was about biology or marriage certificates or legal entitlement. But Grandpa knew better. Family is about showing up. It's about choice. It's about proving through your actions day after day that you actually give a damn. The crowd was silent now, hanging on every word. So today, as we dedicate this building in his honor, I want everyone who walks through these doors to remember what Henry Whitmore actually stood for. Not wealth or power or prestige, though he had all 3, but integrity, consistency, showing up, telling the truth even when it cost you. Being there for people who can't offer you anything in return except their love and respect. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. And maybe, just maybe, being smart enough to recognize when someone's only interested in your bank account and not your Sunday dinners. That's wisdom worth more than $30 million. Trust me. After the ceremony, after the handshakes and the photographs and the speeches from people who'd worked with Grandpa, I found myself alone in front of his portrait. Sarah had taken Chester for a walk, giving me space for what she knew I needed to do. I stood there looking up at the painted version of the man who'd saved my life in more ways than one. And I whispered, "We won, Grandpa. They tried their best, but your plan worked perfectly. You taught me to keep receipts. And boy, did I keep them." I could almost hear his laugh. That dry chuckle he'd do when something amused him. "I'm doing good," I continued quietly. "The firm's helping people. I married someone who actually shows up, and I'm trying to be half the man you were. I think you'd be proud. At least I hope you would be." The portrait didn't answer obviously, but I didn't need it to. I knew. I walked out of the Henry Whitmore Justice Center into the afternoon sunshine where Sarah was waiting with Chester pulling on his leash trying to chase a pigeon. She smiled at me, the kind of smile that said she understood everything without me having to explain, and we headed home together. Behind me, Carved in stone above the courthouse entrance, Grandpa's name would remind everyone who entered that justice, real justice, isn't just about laws and verdicts. It's about truth. It's about showing up. It's about choosing every single day to be a person of integrity, even when, especially when it would be easier not to. Love shows up, greed shows out, and sometimes karma wears a robe and a gavel. Grandpa would have loved that line.
That brings this story to an end, and that one was definitely a wild ride. Let me know what you think in the comments. Now, let's move into the next story, titled,
My sister called from my wife's parents' house. Whispering. Bro, come get me. Bring the police. Why? What happened? I can't talk. They're coming back. Call ended. I drove 90 miles per hour. Arrived in 12 minutes. House dark. Door unlocked. Alone. Surrounded by. I couldn't process what I was seeing. Then my mother-in-law's voice from behind me, you weren't supposed to see that. Police arrived at her house. The September rain drummed against the windows of James Moody's home office as he reviewed footage from his latest project, a documentary about witness protection failures. At 42, James had built a reputation for hard-hitting investigative documentaries that exposed corruption and gave voice to the voiceless. His work had won awards, but more importantly, it had changed laws and freed innocent people. Tonight, though, his mind wasn't fully on the screen. His wife, Marjorie, had taken their 10-year-old son, Toby, to her parents' house for the weekend, and the silence felt wrong somehow. His phone buzzed at 9:47 p.m. Toby's name flashed on the screen. Hey, buddy. Everything okay? James answered, already sensing something off. Dad, the whisper was barely audible. Come get me. Bring the police. James's blood went cold. Why? What happened? I can't talk. They're coming back. The line went dead. James was out the door in 30 seconds, not even grabbing a jacket. He dialed 911 as he drove, but the operator's questions, what's the emergency? What did you see? Couldn't be answered. James had nothing concrete, just a terrified child's whisper. He hung up and pushed his car to 90 miles per hour through the rain-slick streets. The Oliver house sat in an affluent suburb 40 minutes away. James made it in 12. The house loomed dark against the night sky. Not a single light burned in any window. James' hands shook as he tried the front door. Unlocked, he pushed it open slowly. Toby, he called out, his voice echoing through the darkness. Dad, down here. The voice came from below from the direction of the basement stairs. James descended, using his phone's flashlight to navigate the wooden steps. The basement had always been off limits, even to Marjorie. Her mother, Bernadette, claimed it was just storage for her late father's things. Kermit Oliver had died 3 years ago from what everyone believed was a heart attack. The basement was vast, far larger than the footprint of the house above suggested. James' light swept across the space and his breath caught. Toby stood in the center of the room, surrounded by an array of monitors, filing cabinets, and walls covered with photographs. But these weren't family photos. The images showed people, dozens of them, in compromising positions. Affairs, drug use, financial crimes captured in high definition. One wall was devoted entirely to what looked like evidence boards with names, addresses, and dollar amounts written in neat handwriting. I came down looking for the bathroom, Toby said, his voice small. The upstairs one was locked. I found the door behind the bookshelf, and Dad, what is all this? Before James could answer, the lights blazed on. Bernadette Oliver stood at the top of the stairs, her silver hair perfectly coiffed despite the late hour. At 68, she maintained the regal bearing of someone who'd spent her life in control. You weren't supposed to see that, she said calmly, descending the stairs. Her eyes held no panic, no fear, only calculation. Marjorie was supposed to keep you both at the house tonight. I specifically told her to make sure you were busy. Where is my wife? James demanded, stepping protectively in front of Toby. Upstairs, sleeping. I gave her something to help her rest. She's been so stressed lately. Poor dear. Bernadette reached the bottom of the stairs. Put your phone away, James. We both know you're not going to call anyone. You're blackmailing people. Such an ugly word. I prefer to think of it as insurance collection. These people have all done terrible things. I simply ensure they contribute to causes I deem worthy. And before you get any heroic ideas, look at monitor 7. James' eyes followed her gesture. The screen showed a compilation of images. James himself in situations he thought were private. Meeting with confidential sources, accepting cash payments for information, moments that could be taken out of context and spun into a narrative of corruption. You've been doing this for years, James breathed. How long does it matter? What matters is that you understand the situation. I have leveraged over 43 individuals, including 2 police chiefs, a district attorney, 3 judges, a senator, and now you. Your documentary career, your reputation, your freedom. All of it depends on your cooperation. Mom, Marjorie appeared at the top of the stairs, groggy, but alert enough to take in the scene. At 38, she still had the delicate features her mother had possessed in youth. But where Bernadette's eyes were hard, Marjorie's held confusion and dawning horror. Go back to bed, sweetheart, Bernadette said. What is this? Marjorie descended the stairs, her hands trembling. What have you done? What I've always done protected our family. Do you think your father's business success was luck? Do you think James' documentary on the Riverside corruption case won awards because of his talent alone? I've been steering this family toward prosperity since before you were born. James watched as realization crept across his wife's face. You knew, Marjorie whispered about the documentary. You helped him with sources, with funding. Of course, I did. The Riverside case was going nowhere until I ensured certain evidence found its way to the right people. Your husband got his Emmy. The corrupt officials went to prison and I gained leverage over everyone involved. Everyone wins. Except the people you're blackmailing, James said. Bernadette smiled. Those people are criminals, James. Adulterers, thieves, abusers. I'm simply making them pay for their sins. The money goes to good causes, charities, scholarships, community programs. I'm practically a philanthropist. Let us leave. James said, we won't say anything. We'll forget this ever happened. Will you though? Bernadette moved to one of the filing cabinets and withdrew a thick folder. Because I know you, James Moody. I've studied you for 7 years since before you even met my daughter. You're a crusader, a truth seeker. It's what makes you so good at what you do. It's also what makes you predictable. She opened the folder, revealing photographs of James's own family. His sister Carol Collins struggling with addiction after her husband's death. His mother, Maria Moody, living in a modest assisted living facility. I have contingencies, Bernadette continued. Your sister's recovery is fragile. One word to her employer about her past and she loses her job, her insurance, everything. Your mother's facility is expensive. What would happen if the payment stopped? James felt Toby grip his hand tighter. His son had witnessed this entire exchange, was learning exactly what kind of monster his grandmother was. You're going to continue your life exactly as it was. Bernadette said Marjorie and Toby will visit me as usual. You'll make your documentaries and when I need something, a specific story told or buried, a source protected or exposed, you'll do it. That's the cost of everyone you love staying safe. And if I refuse, then everyone learns the truth about James Moody, the documentarian who accepted bribes, planted evidence, manipulated stories for personal gain. Even if you prove it's false, eventually the damage will be done. Your career will be over. Your family will suffer, and I'll still be here running my business because you'll have no credible way to stop me. The silence that followed was broken only by the hum of the monitors and Toby's quiet breathing. James looked at his son, at his wife, at the woman who'd orchestrated their lives like pieces on a chessboard. I understand, James finally said. Bernadette's smile widened. I knew you would. You're a smart man, James. That's why I chose you for my daughter. The drive home was silent. Marjorie sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window while Toby slept in the back, exhausted by fear and adrenaline. James' mind raced, cataloging everything he'd seen. The monitors, the filing systems, the backup drive stacked in the corner. Bernadette's operation was sophisticated, built over decades. When they arrived home, James carried Toby to his bedroom while Marjorie moved like a sleepwalker. Once Toby was settled, James found his wife in the kitchen staring at nothing. How much did you know? He asked quietly. Nothing. Marjorie's voice was hollow. I swear, James. I knew my mother was controlling, that she always had opinions about everything, but this I never imagined. She said she chose me for you. My father died right after we got engaged. She encouraged the relationship from the start. Yes, but I thought Marjorie's voice broke. I loved you. I chose you. James believed her. He'd spent years documenting liars and could spot deception in a heartbeat. Marjorie was a victim, too. Her whole life potentially manipulated by a woman who saw people as assets. What are we going to do? Marjorie asked. James pulled her close. I'm going to think. I'm going to plan. And I'm going to make sure your mother never hurts anyone again. She has evidence against you. Against everyone, the police, the courts, she owns them. I know. James kissed the top of her head. But she made one mistake tonight. What? She showed me everything. She was so confident in her control that she didn't hide the extent of her operation. Now I know what I'm up against and I know exactly how she thinks. Over the next 3 days, James acted normally. He worked on his documentary, had dinner with his family, exchanged pleasantries with Bernadette over the phone when she called to check in. But every spare moment, he was cataloging his memories of that basement, the names he'd glimpsed on the evidence boards, the patterns in her filing system, the technology she used. James had spent 15 years investigating corruption, following money trails, and exposing hidden networks. He toppled criminal organizations, and exposed government conspiracies. Bernadette Oliver might have leverage, but she'd never faced someone who understood how to dismantle power structures from the inside. On the 4th day, James drove to a storage facility 3 towns over and rented a unit under a false name. He paid in cash. Inside, he set up a workstation, a laptop purchased with cryptocurrency, a secure server, and a wall where he began building his own evidence board. Every blackmail victim he could remember, every connection, every pattern. Bernadette had spent decades building her empire of fear. James would spend however long it took to tear it down. The call came 2 weeks later. James was editing footage when his phone rang. A number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Moody, my name is Craig Perez. I believe we need to talk about Bernadette Oliver." James's heart hammered. "Who is this?" "Someone she's been bleeding dry for 8 years. I received a coded message suggesting you might be in a position to help. Can we meet?" "How did you get this number?" "From someone else she's blackmailing. There are more of us than you think, Mr. Moody. We've been trying to find a way out for years. When word got around that you'd seen her operation, word got around." "How?" "Her driver, Fred Merritt. He's one of us, too. And he's been waiting for someone who could actually fight back. He saw you leave that night with your family. He's been quietly building a network of her victims who want to be free." James' mind raced. Bernadette's own driver was working against her. This could be a trap. It could be. Or it could be your only chance. "We're meeting tonight, 1:00 p.m. at the old Riverside warehouse. The one from your documentary. We figured you'd know it's clean. You exposed everything dirty about that place 3 years ago." The line went dead. James sat in silence, weighing his options. It could absolutely be a trap. Bernadette could have discovered his storage unit, his investigation, and was luring him out. But if it was real, if there was a network of victims ready to fight, this changed everything. He called his sister Carol. "Hey, I need you to do something for me. Don't ask questions." "Jamie, you're scaring me. If you don't hear from me by midnight tonight, there's a package in my office safe. The combination is Toby's birthday inside our instructions. Follow them exactly." "What's going on?" "Insurance." "I love you, Carol." He hung up before she could protest, then wrote a detailed letter explaining everything. Bernadette's operation, the basement, the blackmail network. He included the address of his storage unit and every piece of evidence he'd gathered. If this was a trap and he didn't survive, at least the truth would get out. At 9:45 p.m., James drove to the Riverside warehouse. The massive building loomed against the night sky, abandoned since the corruption case had shut down the illegal operations inside. James parked and approached cautiously, every sense on high alert. Inside, a dozen people waited in a circle of folding chairs illuminated by battery-powered lanterns. James recognized 3 faces immediately. A city council woman he'd seen at charity events, a local news anchor, and Detective Rufus Ua, a cop he'd interviewed for a documentary 2 years ago. Mr. Moody, Fred Merritt, stepped forward, a lean man in his 50s with tired eyes. "Thank you for coming. Talk fast. How do I know this isn't a setup? Because we all have too much to lose." The city council woman, Eleanor Haas, stood. "Bernadette Oliver has been blackmailing me for 6 years. She has photos of an affair I had during my first campaign. If I don't vote the way she wants on every city contract, every development deal, she'll destroy me. She has evidence I accepted gifts from a suspect's family." Detective Ua added, "I was trying to help them, but she made it look like bribery. She controls my entire precinct through me." One by one, the others shared their stories. A judge who'd had a gambling problem. A surgeon who'd covered up a mistake. A businessman who'd evaded taxes 20 years ago. All of them trapped. All of them paying. All of them desperate. "How long have you been meeting?" James asked. 6 months, Fred said. "I've been with Mrs. Oliver for 12 years. I've seen everything. The files, the victims, the way she operates. I thought about going to the police, but she owns too many of them. Then I started noticing patterns. People she targeted would sometimes mention each other in passing, not knowing they were both victims. I started making connections, reaching out carefully. We've been trying to find a way to stop her without destroying ourselves in the process. Why me? Why now? Because you have something none of us have, Eleanor said. A platform, access to media, investigation skills, and most importantly, you've already been exposed to her operation. She thinks she has you controlled, but that also means you can get close to her in ways we can't. She has evidence against me, too. James reminded them. Fabricated evidence, Fred said. I know because I helped her create some of it. Photoshopped images, edited videos, manufactured bank statements. The thing about Mrs. Oliver is she's so good at this because most of her leverage is real people's actual crimes and mistakes. But when she needs to control someone who's clean, she's not above creating evidence. I can testify to that. I can prove it's fake. James studied the driver carefully. Why betray her now? After 12 years, Fred's jaw tightened because last month my daughter Kristen came to visit. 22 years old, just graduated college. Mrs. Oliver took photos of her leaving my apartment, had them edited to make it look like something inappropriate, and told me she'd use them against me if I didn't help her target Kristen's new employer, a tech company she wants leverage over. I've done terrible things for that woman, helped her ruin lives. But I won't let her touch my daughter. The raw pain in Fred's voice convinced James more than any evidence could. This was real. These people were desperate, trapped, and finally ready to fight. What do you need from me? James asked. A plan, Detective Ua said. We have pieces, knowledge of her operation, some evidence, access to her daily routine. But we need someone who knows how to put it together into something that can actually take her down. James thought about his storage unit, his evidence board, the weeks of planning he'd already done. He'd been working alone, trying to protect his family while dismantling Bernadette's empire. But with these resources, with these victims ready to turn against her, I need complete transparency. James said, everything you know about her operation, every file, every victim, every payment. I need access to her house, her schedule, her vulnerabilities. Done, Fred said immediately. And I need you all to understand something. Taking down Bernadette, Oliver won't be clean. Your secrets might come out. Some of you might face legal consequences for the things she's blackmailing you about. This could destroy your lives before it saves them. Our lives are already destroyed. The news anchor Georgina Walton said quietly, we're just not in prison yet. At least this way, we get to choose how we fall. James looked around the circle of desperate, determined faces. 12 people willing to risk everything for freedom. Bernadette had built her empire on fear and control, believing herself untouchable. But she'd overlooked the one thing that could bring her down, the collective power of her victims once they decided to fight back. All right, James said. Here's what we're going to do. Over the next month, James orchestrated the most complex investigation of his career. Fred provided access to Bernadette's schedules, her movements, and most crucially, her digital systems. The woman who'd built an empire on blackmail had ironically trusted her driver with administrative passwords, never imagining he'd betray her. James learned the full scope of her operation. 43 victims, as she'd claimed, but the network went deeper. Bernadette had been running this operation for 34 years since her husband Kermit's business had failed in the early 90s. She'd started small, blackmailing a few wealthy neighbors, but had systematized it over decades. Kermit's heart attack 3 years ago had actually been suicide. Fred revealed that the man had discovered his wife's operation and couldn't live with the knowledge of what she'd become. Marjorie took the revelation hardest. Her entire childhood had been built on money extorted from desperate people. The charitable foundation her mother ran funded by blackmail. The prestigious schools Marjorie had attended paid for with other people's misery. Every happy memory was poisoned by the truth. But Marjorie's pain hardened into resolve. She began working with James, using her insider access to her mother's life to gather additional evidence. She photographed documents during visits, recorded conversations, and slowly built a case from the inside. The breakthrough came when James discovered Bernadette's true weakness, her ego. The woman documented everything because she wanted a record of her power. In a hidden safe in her bedroom revealed by Fred. She kept physical proof of every crime, every payment, every piece of leverage. It was her insurance policy, but it was also her vulnerability. She's paranoid about digital evidence being hacked, Fred explained during one of their late-night meetings at the warehouse. So, she keeps the most damaging material in hard copy, bank records, original photos, signed confessions, everything. We need that safe, James said. Getting into her bedroom would require a family emergency. Marjorie interrupted something that would pull her away from the house long enough for someone to access the safe. James looked at his wife. You're sure? She destroyed my father. She's been using me my entire life. She threatened my son. Marjorie's eyes were steel. I'm sure they spent 3 weeks planning. Detective Ua provided intelligence on Bernardette's security systems. Eleanor used her position on the city council to ensure certain building inspectors would be looking the other way at crucial moments. The surgeon, Wendell McCarty, agreed to stage a medical emergency at a charity gala Bernardette was attending. Fred would drive her to the hospital, keeping her away from the house. Meanwhile, James would break into the safe, document everything, and create copies of the evidence. But they needed more than just evidence. They needed a way to release it that couldn't be stopped or traced back to them. Bernardette had too many powerful allies. The solution came from an unexpected source. Ignazio Wolf, a tech entrepreneur Bernardette had been blackmailing for 4 years, revealed he'd been developing a decentralized data distribution network for whistleblowers. It's designed to release information across multiple platforms simultaneously, impossible to stop once activated. I built it because of her, actually. I just never had the courage to use it. Can it handle this much data? James asked. Terabytes, documents, photos, videos, everything. And it releases to news organizations, social media, law enforcement databases, all at once. Even if she manages to shut down one source, the information keeps spreading. James smiled for the first time in weeks. Then we have our weapon. The plan was set for November 15th at a gala fundraiser for children's literacy. One of Bernardette's favorite charities, ironically funded by extortion. At precisely 8:30 p.m., Dr. McCarty would stage chest pain severe enough to require immediate hospitalization. Bernardette, as the event sponsor, would insist on accompanying him. Fred would drive her to the hospital, then report car trouble, keeping her stranded until James had what he needed. James would have exactly 2 hours to break into the Oliver house, crack the safe, photograph every document, and escape. Toby would stay with Carol, protected by 2 of Detective Ua's trusted officers. Marjorie would be at the gala maintaining appearances while monitoring Bernardette. The night before the operation, James couldn't sleep. He sat in his home office reviewing the plan for the 100th time. So many things could go wrong. If Bernardette discovered the breach early, if the safe had additional security they didn't know about, if any of the 12 victims got cold feet and warned her, "You're doing the right thing." James turned to find Marjorie in the doorway wearing one of his old shirts. Am I? We're breaking a dozen laws. If this fails, Toby loses both his parents. If we do nothing, Toby grows up learning that monsters win if they're smart enough. Marjorie sat beside him. My mother needs to face justice. Not just for us, but for everyone she's hurt. For my father, James took her hand. When this is over, assuming we're not in prison, what do you want to do? I want to take Toby somewhere far away from here. Somewhere she never touched. And I want to build a life that's actually ours, not one she orchestrated. Marjorie leaned her head on his shoulder. But first, I want to watch her empire burn. The next evening, James watched from across the street as luxury cars arrived at the downtown hotel hosting the gala. He wore all black, a backpack containing tools and camera equipment slung over his shoulder. His phone buzzed. A text from Marjorie. She's here holding court like a queen. At 8:30 exactly, another text. It's happening. James drove to the Oliver house parking 3 blocks away. Fred had confirmed the security system was older, relying on motion sensors that could be fooled by specific movement patterns. James approached the house carefully using the technique Detective Ua had taught him, slow, deliberate movements close to the walls where sensors were less sensitive. The back door opened with the key Marjorie had provided. Inside, the house was silent. James moved through the familiar halls, up the stairs to Bernardette's bedroom. The master suite was enormous, decorated in expensive neutrals. James found the safe behind a painting. How cliché, he thought, of Bernardette and Kermit on their wedding day. The young couple smiled at the camera, unaware of the darkness their future held. The safe was a high-end model with both a key and combination lock. Fred had provided the combination obtained months ago during one of Bernardette's careless moments. James' hands shook as he dialed the numbers. July 18th, 34. The date Bernardette had started her operation. The safe clicked open. Inside were 5 leather-bound ledgers, dozens of manila folders, several external hard drives, and stacks of photographs. James photographed everything systematically using a high-resolution camera to capture each page, each image, each piece of evidence. The ledgers detailed every payment, every threat, every victim. The folders contained the blackmail material itself, affairs, crimes, mistakes, all documented with clinical precision. One folder was labeled James Moody. Inside, James found the fabricated evidence against him along with Bernardette's handwritten notes. Subject is ideal for long-term control. Moral compass makes him predictable. Suggest marriage to Marjorie to secure permanent access. Useful for media manipulation and information gathering. His wife had been right. Their entire relationship had been engineered. The rage James felt in that moment nearly derailed his focus. But he channeled it into determination. Every photo, every document, every piece of evidence went into his camera's memory. He was closing the safe when his phone buzzed. Problem. She's suspicious. Calling Fred back. Get out now. James' heart hammered. He'd photographed maybe 80% of the contents. He needed more time. Another text, this time from Fred. She knows something's wrong. Demanding I take her home immediately. ETA 15 minutes. 15 minutes wasn't enough to escape cleanly and eliminate all traces of his presence. James made a split-second decision. He grabbed 3 of the ledgers and 2 folders of the most damaging evidence, including his own fabricated file, and shoved them into his backpack. Then he closed the safe, rehung the painting, and ran. He made it out the back door and across the yard when he heard a car pulling into the driveway. James dove behind a hedge as Bernadette's Mercedes appeared. Fred at the wheel looking pale and stressed. Bernadette emerged, her face tight with suspicion. Check every room. She ordered Fred. Something's wrong. I can feel it. James waited until they were inside, then sprinted to his car. He drove carefully, maintaining the speed limit despite every instinct screaming to floor it. His phone rang. Marjorie, did you get it? Most of it. She came back early. I had to take the physical evidence. She'll know it's gone. Silence. Then we move to phase 2 now. Tonight before she can regroup. We're not ready. We have to be. Call everyone. Tell them it's happening now. James' mind raced through contingencies. They'd planned for this scenario. A rushed deployment. If the operation was compromised, Ignacio's system was ready. The evidence James had collected over the past month was already uploaded. The physical documents he'd just stolen would fill in the gaps. Do it, James said. He drove straight to Ignacio's apartment where the tech entrepreneur was already at his computer. Multiple screens showing the distribution network interface. Eleanor, Detective Ua, and 4 others from their group were there, having rushed over when Marjorie sent the alert. How much do we have? Ignacio asked as James burst in. Everything. Digital photos of her ledgers, the blackmail files, payment records, plus the originals of her 3 most recent years of operation. James dumped the ledgers and folders onto the desk. Can your system handle this? Give me 2 hours to scan the physical evidence and integrate it with what you already uploaded. Then we deploy. Detective Ua's phone rang. He listened, his face darkening. That was my contact at the station. Bernadette just called in a burglary. She's got 3 squad cars en route to her house and she specifically requested that I not be involved in the investigation. She knows it was one of us. Eleanor said worse. James realized she knows we're working together. Fred must have. His phone rang. Fred's number. James answered on speaker. James listened carefully. Fred's voice was strained. Wrong. She has my daughter Kristen. She had someone grab her from her apartment an hour ago. Bernadette says, if I don't tell her everything, if I don't give her the names of everyone working against her, His voice broke. Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I can't let her hurt my baby. Bernadette's voice came through the phone. Hello, James. I admit I'm impressed. You actually managed to organize a rebellion. Very cinematic. But you forgot something crucial. I'm always 3 steps ahead. Fred's daughter is safe with some associates of mine. She'll stay that way as long as everyone cooperates. You have 1 hour to return my property and disperse your little group. Otherwise, Kristen Merritt becomes the first casualty of your failed revolution. And James, I still have evidence against everyone in your coalition. You can't release it without destroying them all. So, what's it going to be? Your principles or their lives? The line went dead. The room erupted in panicked voices. Someone was crying. Detective Ua was calling his contacts trying to trace Christine's location. Eleanor sat down heavily, her face ashen. She wins, Wendell McCarty said quietly. She always wins. No. James's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone quiet. We have one advantage. She doesn't know how far we've gotten. She thinks we're still gathering evidence that we need more time. She doesn't know Ignacio's system is ready, but it's not. Ignacio protested. I need 2 hours to integrate. Then we deploy what we have. The photos I took tonight, the evidence I've been gathering for weeks. It's incomplete, but it's enough to cause chaos. Enough to make the authorities look at her seriously. And Kristen dies. Fred's voice came from James' phone. The call hadn't actually disconnected. Bernadette had left the line open, letting them hear Fred's despair. "You'll kill my daughter to make a point." James closed his eyes, thinking fast. Bernadette's mistake was believing he'd choose between justice and an innocent life. But there was always another option, the one she'd never consider because she thought he was predictable. "Ignacio, can your system send files to specific recipients instead of broadcasting everything?" "Yes, but send everything we have to Detective U's captain. Just him. Include a note that Bernadette Oliver is holding Kristen Merritt hostage at an unknown location and that she needs to be arrested immediately for kidnapping. Make it impossible to ignore that'll burn all of us. Eleanor said our secrets will come out better than an innocent woman dying." James looked around the room. "I'm giving you all an out. Walk away now. I'll take the fall. Say I coerced you. But if you stay, you need to understand we're going all in. Our secrets, our careers, everything. We exchanged our controlled destruction for her complete downfall." One by one, they nodded. Even Eleanor, who had the most to lose, straightened her shoulders and said, "Do it, Fred," James said into the phone. "We're coming for Kristen, and we're bringing Bernadette down tonight. Trust us." He hung up before Fred could respond. "Ignacio, send it. Everything, not just to the captain. Send it everywhere. News stations, the FBI, the state attorney general. Make it impossible to bury." "That's not the plan. The plan changed when she took a hostage. Send it all." Ignacio's fingers flew across the keyboard. Windows opened and closed on his screens. File transfer bars crept across displays. "It's going to take 15 minutes to upload and deploy across all channels. Then we have 15 minutes to find Kristen." James turned to Detective Ua. "You said Bernadette has associates. Who?" "She's used the same security company for years. Bolton Security. They handle her home security, personal protection, the works. Ex-military types, not particular about the legality of their work. Where would they take someone for leverage?" Ua thought for a moment. "Bolton has a storage facility they use for equipment. It's isolated, secure. If I was going to hold someone, that's where I'd do it. Address." "James. We can't." "Address." Ua rattled it off. James was already heading for the door. "Call your captain. Tell him everything. Make sure he knows there's a hostage situation. And Ignacio, don't stop that upload no matter what happens." Eleanor grabbed his arm. "You're not going alone. I am. The rest of you need to be here on record cooperating with authorities when this breaks. If I'm the only one who goes off mission, the legal exposure is minimized for everyone else." Before they could argue, James was gone, running to his car. The storage facility was 20 minutes away. The data upload would complete in 12. He had a narrow window to extract Kristen before Bernadette realized her empire was burning. James pushed his car hard, running red lights and weaving through traffic. His phone buzzed constantly. Calls from Marjorie, from the group, from numbers he didn't recognize. He ignored them all. The storage facility was a squat concrete building surrounded by chain-link fence. A single guard sat in a booth at the entrance looking bored. James drove past, parking a block away. He approached on foot, staying in the shadows. The fence was easy to climb. James dropped into the facility's lot and moved between rows of storage units. Most were dark, but light showed under the door of Unit 47. James crept closer and heard voices inside. Two men talking about sports, sounding relaxed. He didn't have a weapon. He didn't have backup. What he had was surprise and desperation. James picked up a rock from the gravel lot and threw it hard at a storage unit 3 rows over. The clang echoed across the facility. Inside Unit 47, the conversation stopped. "Check it out," one voice said. The door opened and a large man in tactical gear emerged holding a flashlight. James waited until he was 10 feet away, then stepped out of the shadows. "Looking for me?" The man spun, reaching for a weapon, but James was already moving. 15 years of documentary work had taken him to war zones, disaster areas, and dangerous places. He'd learned to fight out of necessity, studying under the same self-defense instructors who trained journalists in conflict zones. James ducked the man's grab, drove his elbow into the guard's throat and followed with a knee to the gut. The man went down gasping. James took his flashlight and his radio, then zip-tied his hands with a cable tie from the man's own belt. Clearly, they'd come prepared for restraining people. The second guard emerged from the unit. "Rick, what's—" James hit him in the face with the flashlight. The man stumbled back and James tackled him, both of them crashing into the storage unit. Inside, Kristen Merritt was zip-tied to a chair, her eyes wide with terror. The guard was bigger than James and trained. They grappled, knocking over boxes and equipment. The guard got on top, raining down punches. James blocked most of them, but his vision blurred. He was going to lose this fight. Then Kristen, still bound to the chair, hopped forward, and brought the chair down on the guard's back. The man howled and rolled off James. James scrambled to his feet, grabbed a metal pipe from the corner, and brought it down on the guard's head. The man went limp. James cutrous free with the guard's knife. "Can you walk?" "I think so." "Who?" "Friend of your father's." "We need to go now." They ran for the fence. Behind them, James heard the first guard regaining consciousness, shouting into his radio. James and Kristen cleared the fence and reached his car as headlights appeared at the facility entrance. Bolton security reinforcements. James drove, checking his rear view mirror constantly. His phone buzzed. "Marjorie, it's everywhere. The news just broke. They're calling it the biggest blackmail operation in state history." "Good," James said. "Kristen's safe." "Where's Bernadette?" "At the house. Police are surrounding it. She won't come out." James changed direction, heading for the Oliver residence. Kristen stared at him. "What's happening? What did my father get involved in?" "Your father is a hero," James said. "He helped take down a monster." The Oliver house was chaos when they arrived. Police cars, news vans, helicopters overhead with spotlights. James parked a block away and approached on foot with Kristen. Detective Ua met them at the perimeter. "She's barricaded inside," Ua said. "Won't talk to negotiators, but James, it's working. The captain has assigned a task force. The DA is already drawing up charges. Every person she blackmailed is being contacted. Half of them are coming forward voluntarily now that the evidence is public." "Where's Marjorie?" "Where's Toby with your sister?" "Safe." Ua has studied James. "You look like hell." "I feel worse." James watched the house. The lights burning in every window. "Does she know Fred is alive? That Kristen is safe?" "We haven't told her anything. She's alone in there and she knows her world is ending." Fred Merritt appeared from behind a police cruiser running to his daughter. The reunion was tearful. Fred looked at James over Kristen's shoulder and mouthed, "Thank you." An hour passed. 2. The standoff continued. Then as dawn began to lighten the sky, movement at the front door. Bernadette emerged immaculate in a tailored suit, her silver hair perfect despite the circumstances. She walked down the steps with her head high, ignoring the police officers approaching with weapons drawn. "I would like to make a statement," she announced, her voice carrying across the chaos. Immediately, cameras and microphones thrust toward her. She'd always known how to command a stage. "For 34 years, I have operated a business that held powerful people accountable for their crimes and indiscretions. I collected what they owed society and redistributed it to worthy causes. Millions of dollars to charities, scholarships, community programs. Yes, my methods were unconventional, but the results speak for themselves." "You destroyed lives," a reporter shouted. "I exposed people who deserve to be exposed. Adulterers, thieves, corrupt officials. Every person I targeted was guilty of something. I simply made them pay." "What about James Moody?" "The evidence against him was fabricated." For the first time, Bernadette's composure cracked slightly. Her eyes found James in the crowd. "Mr. Moody is an exception. I needed someone I could control who had the skills to assist my operation. The evidence against him was insurance." "So, you framed an innocent man." "I did what was necessary. In any system of justice, there are occasionally innocent casualties." Detective Ua stepped forward. "Bernadette Oliver, you're under arrest for kidnapping, extortion, blackmail, and about 40 other charges. You have the right to remain silent." "I will not be silent." Bernadette's voice rose. "You are arresting the wrong person. Every person I blackmailed committed crimes. They should be in handcuffs, not me. I was serving justice where the system failed." "You were serving yourself," James called out. The crowd parted, creating a path between them. "You used your husband's suicide to build an empire. You manipulated your own daughter's life. You threatened children. You're not a vigilante or a philanthropist. You're just a criminal who got good at justifying her crimes." Bernadette's mask finally shattered. "You self-righteous fool. Do you think you've won? My lawyers will have me out in hours. The evidence you stole is inadmissible. Half the judges in this state owe me favors. You've accomplished nothing except ensuring your own secrets are public. How does it feel, James, knowing everyone now thinks you're corrupt? The evidence against me was fake, and Fred Merritt is prepared to testify to that in court. But even if it wasn't, even if I had to sacrifice my reputation to stop you, it would be worth it. Because unlike you, I understand that some things are more important than control. Police officers moved in, placing handcuffs on Bernardette's wrists. She didn't resist, but her eyes burned with hatred. "This isn't over." "Yes," James said quietly. "It is." As they led her away, the crowd erupted. Reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, people cheering. James felt nothing but exhaustion. He'd won, but the cost was still being calculated. Over the next 6 weeks, the scope of Bernardette's operation fully emerged. The task force discovered evidence of 127 victims beyond the original 43, spanning 3 decades. The ledgers James had photographed detailed over $50 million in extorted payments. Bernardette had invested the money in legitimate businesses and real estate, creating a complex financial empire that took forensic accountants months to untangle. The victims' stories dominated the news cycle. Some, like Eleanor Haas, chose to publicly confess their original sins and accept the consequences. Eleanor resigned from the city council but emerged with her integrity intact, having chosen honesty over continued hiding. Others were prosecuted for their crimes. The gambling judge lost his position. The tax-evading businessmen faced charges. But most of the victims were people who'd made mistakes, not committed serious crimes, and they found public sympathy when the full context emerged. Fred Merritt became an unexpected hero. His testimony about Bernardette's operation providing crucial evidence. He'd kept detailed records of everything he'd done in her service, and his willingness to face consequences for his complicity helped bring down her network of accomplices at Bolton Security and other companies. James' fabricated evidence was debunked quickly. Ignazio's analysis showed the photoshopping and digital manipulation. Fred's testimony confirmed how it was created. James' reputation, rather than being destroyed, was enhanced. The documentary filmmaker who'd taken down a massive criminal conspiracy became a household name. Networks offered him deals for new series. Book publishers wanted his story, but James turned most of it down. He made one documentary about the experience, carefully edited to protect the victims who wanted privacy while exposing the full scope of Bernardette's crimes. The Emmy he won for it felt hollow compared to the satisfaction of seeing justice served. Marjorie struggled the most. Her mother's arrest, the revelation of how her entire life had been manipulated, the knowledge that her father had killed himself rather than live with his wife's crimes. It broke something in her. She spent months in therapy working through the trauma while trying to shield Toby from the worst details. The divorce papers arrived at the jail where Bernardette was being held awaiting trial. According to Fred, who visited once to give his final testimony, she ripped them up without reading them. She still believed she'd done nothing wrong. The trial was a media sensation. Bernardette represented herself, firing 4 lawyers who tried to argue for plea deals. She used the courtroom as a stage, giving impassioned speeches about justice and accountability, portraying herself as a misunderstood crusader against corruption. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and found her guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge, a new appointment from outside the state to ensure impartiality, addressed Bernardette directly. "You claim you were serving justice, but justice requires transparency, accountability, and fairness. You operated in secret, answered to no one, and showed no mercy. You destroyed lives not because those people deserve punishment, but because you could profit from their destruction. You are everything you claim to oppose." The court sentences you to 45 years in federal prison. Bernardette showed no emotion as Baifs led her away. But as she passed James, seated in the gallery with Marjorie and Toby, she paused. "You'll never be free of me," she said quietly. "Every time you look at your wife, you'll remember that I chose her for you. Every success you have, you'll wonder if I engineered it. I may be in prison, but I'm still in your head." James met her eyes. "No, you're just in prison, and that's all you'll ever be again." 6 months after the sentencing, James stood in the living room of a new house in Vermont, hundreds of miles from the Oliver estate and its poisoned memories. Toby was at school making friends who knew nothing about the scandal. Marjorie was teaching art at a local college, rediscovering a passion her mother had discouraged as impractical. Carol had moved nearby, 2 years sober, and working as a counselor for other recovering addicts. James' phone buzzed. A message from Fred Merritt, who was serving his own sentence at a minimum security facility for his role in Bernardette's operation. "Kristen graduated today. Top of her class. Thank you for giving her that chance." James smiled and typed back, "You gave it to her. You chose to fight." He looked out the window at the mountains in the distance, at the clean snow covering the ground, at the world unburdened by Bernardette Oliver Unk's schemes. The scars would always be there, the knowledge of how their lives had been manipulated, the years they'd lost to her control. But they were free now. They'd earned that freedom through courage, sacrifice, and the willingness to risk everything for truth. Marjorie emerged from her studio, paint on her hands and a rare smile on her face. "Come see what I finished." In the studio stood a large canvas. The painting showed a house, the Oliver estate, but rendered in abstract violent strokes, the structure fragmenting and dissolving into light. It was cathartic, a visual representation of their liberation. "It's perfect," James said, pulling her close. "It's the last one," Marjorie replied. "I've been painting our trauma for 6 months. This is the final piece. After this, I paint new things, beautiful things, things that are ours." That evening, as they had dinner together, a real family, unmanipulated and authentic, Toby asked a question that had clearly been on his mind. "Dad, do you think Grandma will ever admit she was wrong?" James considered lying, offering comfort. But his son deserved truth. "No, buddy. Some people can't see their own mistakes. They build walls of justification so high they can't see over them. Your grandmother convinced herself that being powerful was the same as being right. But you proved she was wrong. We proved it. You, me, Mom, Fred, and everyone else who was brave enough to stand up. One person can't fight someone like her alone. But together, we were stronger than her fear." Toby nodded, processing this. Then with the resilience of childhood, he asked, "Can I have dessert?" James laughed, feeling the weight of the past year finally beginning to lift. They'd survived. They'd fought. They'd won. And now, finally, they could begin to heal. Outside, snow began to fall, covering the world in white, pristine, and new.
And that concludes this story. That was a pretty wild one if you ask me. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Now, let's get right into the next story. It's titled,
My Wife's Family Reunion in Martha's Vineyard. They forgot to book accommodations for me. Oops, everything's full. 67 family members in luxury rentals. I made one call. Next day, when a helicopter landed and picked up just me. Police arrived at her house. Nathan Forbes had learned early in life that some people measured worth in dollar signs, while others measured it in character. The Greer family had always been firmly in the first camp, and Nathan had been fighting an uphill battle for respect since the day he married their daughter, Molly, 15 years ago. He stood in the kitchen of their suburban Boston home, watching Molly hang up the phone with her mother. The forced smile on her face told him everything he needed to know before she even spoke. "So, the reunion's confirmed," Molly said, setting her phone on the counter with deliberate care. "Last week of July, Martha's Vineyard moms rented out 3 entire estates." Nathan raised an eyebrow. 3 estates? How many people are we talking about? 67, including us. Molly wouldn't meet his eyes. "It's the whole extended family. Cousins, second cousins, everyone." Nathan had met Molly during his graduate program at MIT back when he was burning through his doctoral dissertation on adaptive systems theory while working 3 jobs to pay for it. She'd been different then, or maybe he'd been too in love to see the warning signs. Her family came from old Northeastern money, the kind that bought summer homes in the Berkers and winter condos in Palm Beach. They tolerated Nathan at first. Certain Molly would eventually come to her senses and marry someone from their circle. That was before Nathan had turned down lucrative corporate offers to build something of his own. Before the lean years, before they had Taylor, 14-year-old Taylor walked into the kitchen, backpack slung over one shoulder, his face buried in a book about marine biology. The kid had Nathan's analytical mind and Molly's gentle nature, the best of both of them. He was quiet, thoughtful, the kind of teenager who preferred titles to parties. "Hey buddy," Nathan said. "Your mom's got news about the family trip." Taylor looked up and Nathan caught the flicker of anxiety in his son's eyes. The kid had learned to dread Greer family gatherings. There were always comments, subtle digs about Nathan's work, pointed questions about their modest lifestyle, comparisons to cousins whose parents bought them expensive cars and designer clothes. "It's going to be amazing," Molly said with forced enthusiasm. "Martha's Vineyard for a whole week. You'll love it, Taylor. Beach, sailing, maybe some whale watching." Taylor nodded. But Nathan saw his grip tighten on his book. That night, after Taylor had gone to bed, Nathan found Molly staring out the bedroom window. "Your mother gave you the speech, didn't she?" Nathan asked. Molly sighed. "She just thinks we should make more of an effort socially. Translation: I should wear nicer clothes and pretend I care about yacht clubs." "Nathan, I'm not criticizing you, Mole." He came up behind her, resting his hands on her shoulders. "I know this is hard for you." What Nathan didn't say was that he'd noticed the pattern over the years. Every family gathering became an exercise in subtle humiliation. Molly's brother, Heath, had made a fortune in finance and never let Nathan forget it. Her sister, Kendra, had married a venture capitalist. Even her cousins seemed to operate on a different economic plane, one where summer homes and luxury cars were baseline expectations. Nathan's own parents had passed away when he was in college, a car accident that left him orphaned and alone. He'd fought his way through MIT on scholarships and determination, built his consulting firm from nothing. But the Greers measured success in inheritance and connections, not grit and innovation. 2 weeks before the trip, the first red flag appeared. Molly was on the phone with her mother, voice tight with barely controlled frustration. "What do you mean the accommodations are set? I thought you said we'd discuss." "Yes, but Mom. Nathan and I can cover our own." "I understand," but she pressed her fingers to her temple. "Fine. Okay, I'll let him know." She hung up and looked at Nathan with apologetic eyes. "They've already assigned all the rooms and we're in the guest cottage at the Ashworth estate. It's nice, Nathan. Really nice, but separate from everyone else. It's just logistics. The main houses are for the couples with multiple children, the larger families." Nathan had expected this. The Greers had been finding ways to other them for years, but he kept his voice neutral. "Whatever works, Mole." What Nathan didn't share was the email he'd received 2 days later from Heath Greer, Molly's older brother. It was addressed to the entire family group, a detailed itinerary for the reunion. Nathan scanned through pages of planned activities: golf at an exclusive club, dinner at restaurants that required reservations months in advance, a private yacht excursion, a catered beachside gala. At the bottom, in what looked like an afterthought, was a note: accommodations confirmed for all family members. See attached spreadsheet. Nathan opened the spreadsheet. 67 names, each with assigned lodging. He found his own name, Molly's, and then Taylor's name wasn't there. He read through it twice, certain he'd missed it. But no, every family member was listed except his son. Nathan walked to Molly's home office where she was reviewing lesson plans for the fall semester. She taught art history at a local college, a job her family considered a hobby despite her PhD. "Mole, did you see Heath's email?" She looked up, distracted. "The itinerary? Yeah, it's ambitious. I told Mom we might skip some of the activities. Look at the accommodations list." She pulled it up on her laptop and Nathan watched her face change as she scrolled through. "This can't be right. Taylor's not. This is a mistake. I'll call Mom right now." But Nathan had already seen enough mistakes over the years to recognize a pattern. "Wait, let me guess what she'll say." Molly's call to Gail Greer lasted 15 minutes. Nathan listened from the doorway, his jaw tightening with each excuse he heard Molly repeat. "She says the booking was done months ago. The rental properties have maximum occupancy limits. They tried to find additional space, but everything's booked. She says, we can figure out local hotels in Martha's Vineyard in peak summer season." Nathan's voice was cold. "Mole, they're housing 66 people in luxury estates, and they're telling us our son, their grandson, needs to find a hotel. She says it was an oversight. It's always an oversight with them." Nathan turned away before Molly could see the anger in his eyes. "Tell her we'll handle it." Over the next week, Molly made phone calls. Every hotel, every bed and breakfast, every vacation rental within a 20-mile radius of Martha's Vineyard was booked solid. She expanded the search to the mainland, looking at places in Falmouth and Woods Hole, but nothing suitable was available. Nathan watched his wife grow increasingly desperate, making call after call while her family sent group texts about excursion reservations and dinner plans. Not one of them acknowledged the problem they'd created. It was Taylor who finally broke Nathan's resolve. The night before they were supposed to leave, Nathan found his son sitting on his bed, carefully folding clothes into a small duffel bag. The larger suitcase sat empty in the corner. "Planning to travel light?" Nathan asked, keeping his tone casual. Taylor didn't look up. "I figured if there's no room for me, I should be ready too. I don't know. Maybe I can stay in the car or something." "Taylor, it's okay, Dad." His son's voice was steady, but Nathan could hear the hurt underneath. "I know Grandma Gail's family doesn't really. I mean, I get it. We're not like them." Nathan sat down on the bed beside his son. "Look at me, buddy." Taylor finally met his eyes, and Nathan saw the same expression he'd worn himself 1,000 times growing up. The look of someone who'd learned not to expect too much, to make themselves smaller, to fit into spaces that weren't built for them. "You listen to me," Nathan said quietly. "You're worth 10 of them. You're brilliant. You're kind. And you've got more integrity in your little finger than that whole family combined. Don't ever let anyone make you feel like you're not enough. But we don't have the money they have, Dad. We don't have the house or the cars, or money isn't the same as worth." Nathan put his arm around his son's shoulders. "I learned that the hard way. And I'll be damned if I let them teach you otherwise. After Taylor went to bed, Nathan sat in his home office staring at his phone. He'd sworn he'd never make this call, never cash in this particular chip. Pride had kept him silent for 15 years, had made him refuse every offer of help, every extended hand. But this wasn't about him anymore. He pulled up a contact he hadn't used in over a decade, and typed out a message. "Byron, it's Nathan Forbes. I know it's been a long time, but I need to ask you for something. Can we talk?" The response came less than a minute later. "Nathan, my God, man. I've been trying to reach you for years. Call me anytime, day or night." Nathan glanced at the clock. 11:47 p.m. He made the call. Byron Odom answered on the first ring. "Nathan Forbes, the man who disappeared into the suburbs. I thought you'd forgotten about your old college roommate. I've been busy, Byron. Too busy for the guy who lived on ramen noodles with you in that shoebox apartment at MIT." Byron's voice was warm without judgment. "I read about your consulting firm. Impressive work. You always were the smartest person in any room." Nathan had met Byron during their freshman year at MIT. They'd been assigned as roommates in the overcrowded dorms. Nathan on a full scholarship. Byron the heir to a shipping fortune worth billions. They should have had nothing in common. Instead, they'd become brothers. Byron had seen Nathan at his lowest, working 3 jobs while maintaining a perfect GPA, eating dollar store pasta for weeks at a time, studying while exhausted enough to fall asleep over his textbooks. And Byron had never once made Nathan feel less than equal. When Byron's family hosted charity galas, he'd invite Nathan. When Byron got a new car, he'd offer Nathan the keys to his old one without making it feel like charity. Nathan had always refused. Pride maybe, or fear that accepting help would prove what the Greers had always implied, that he needed their world more than they needed him. After graduation, Byron had taken over his family's empire, expanding it into technology and renewable energy. His name appeared in Forbes and Fortune. He moved in circles where CEOs and senators were casual acquaintances. Nathan had deliberately pulled away, building his life without those connections. Now he was breaking 15 years of silence to ask for help. "I need to ask you for something," Nathan said. "For my son," he explained the situation, the family reunion, the forgotten accommodation, Taylor's tears. He kept his voice level factual. But Byron had always been able to read between his words. "Those people did this deliberately," Byron said, his voice hard. "Yeah. And you've been dealing with this kind of treatment for how long?" 15 years. A long silence. Then Byron laughed, not with humor, but with the kind of dark amusement that came from recognizing an opportunity. "Nathan, do you know what I've been doing for the past decade while you've been ignoring my calls? Building your empire, among other things, but I've also been waiting for you to finally ask me for help with something, anything." Byron's tone shifted, became businesslike. "Here's what's going to happen. You and Taylor are going to Martha's Vineyard as planned. I want you to show up at that family gathering. Let them see Taylor's face when he realizes there's nowhere for him to stay. Let them twist the knife." "Byron, trust me, how dramatic do you want this?" Nathan thought about Taylor's expression as he packed that small duffel bag. Thought about 15 years of subtle humiliation, of watching his wife apologize for his existence, of seeing his son learn to make himself invisible. "Very," Nathan said, "perfect. I'll handle everything. Just play along and keep your phone on. Tomorrow's going to be interesting." They talked for another hour. Byron catching up on the years they'd missed. Nathan finally dropping the walls he'd built. By the time they hung up, Nathan felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Anticipation. The next morning, the Forbes family loaded their car for the drive to Cape Cod. Taylor was quiet, his duffel bag at his feet, his expression resigned. Molly chatted nervously about the beach, about the activities they could do on their own, trying to paint optimism over the disaster they were driving toward. They caught the ferry to Martha's Vineyard in the afternoon, the sun bright on the water. Taylor stood at the railing, watching the mainland recede, and Nathan stood beside him. "It's going to be okay, buddy," Nathan said. Taylor nodded but didn't answer. The Greer family had taken over a section of Edgerton, 3 massive estates along the waterfront, each property worth millions. When Nathan pulled up to the designated meeting point, the first thing he saw was the sheer scale of wealth on display. Luxury vehicles lined the circular driveway. Family members gathered on the expansive lawn, glasses of champagne in hand, children running between them. Gail Greer stood at the center of it all, holding court. She was a tall woman in her late 60s, elegant in white linen, her silver hair perfectly styled. Everything about her radiated old money and older attitudes. She spotted Nathan's car, a reliable but unimpressive sedan, and her smile tightened. Keith Greer, Molly's brother, stood beside his mother wearing khakis and a polo shirt that probably cost more than Nathan's monthly car payment. His wife, Bethany Hudson Greer, looked like she'd stepped out of a country club catalog. Molly got out first, immediately enveloped by her sister, Kendra Shaw, and a gaggle of cousins. Nathan helped Taylor with their bags, aware of the eyes on them, the subtle assessments. "Nathan, Molly, you made it." Gail swept forward, kissing Molly on both cheeks before turning to Nathan with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And Taylor, darling, you've grown." "Hi, Grandma Gail," Taylor said quietly. Come. Let me show you to your cottage. It's charming." "Really?" "Very private." Gail gestured toward a path that led away from the main estates. "The rest of the family is settled in the main houses. We've had such fun getting organized. The children are already asking about the beach." Nathan felt Taylor stiffen beside him. Molly was already walking with her mother, and Nathan caught the moment she asked, "Mom, what about Taylor's room?" "Oh." Gail's hand flew to her throat in a performance of surprise that wouldn't have fooled the child. "Oh dear, Molly. Darling, I thought you understood. The properties have strict occupancy limits. We did the booking months ago and well, it simply didn't work out. I'm sure Taylor can find somewhere comfortable. Perhaps one of the hotels in town." Molly stopped walking. "Mom, I called every hotel within 20 meters. Everything's booked." "Oh my, how unfortunate." Gail's tone suggested she found it more inconvenient than unfortunate. "Well, perhaps Taylor could share a room with one of his cousins." Heath appeared at his mother's elbow, drink in hand. "Actually, the kids are already settled and pretty packed in. It would be tight to add another." "He's your nephew," Nathan said, his voice carefully controlled. Heath shrugged. "Look, Nathan, I get it. Bad planning all around, but we can't just kick people out of rooms. Maybe Taylor can camp." Some of the older cousins were talking about setting up tents on the beach. "Could be fun." Nathan felt Taylor's hand grip his arm. When he looked down, his son's eyes were wet, his jaw clenched against tears. "It's fine," Taylor whispered. "Dad, it's fine. We can just go home." And there it was, the moment that crystallized everything. His 14-year-old son surrounded by 66 family members in luxury estates, being told he should be grateful for the option to sleep in a tent. Being taught that his place in this family was conditional, lesser, disposable. Nathan looked at Molly, who stood frozen between her family and her son, her face pale. He looked at Gail, whose expression showed performative concern, but no actual remorse. He looked at Heath, smirking behind his drink. Then Nathan pulled out his phone and made a show of checking the time. "You know what? I think I'll make a call. See if I can't find us something better than a tent." Heath snorted. "Good luck with that. Everything's booked, man. We've been planning this for a year." Nathan smiled and walked a few steps away, pressing Byron's number. His old friend answered immediately. "Right on schedule," Byron said. "Are they being as awful as you described?" "Worse." "Perfect. Give me 45 minutes. Nathan returned to where Taylor stood, his son's shoulders hunched with humiliation. He put his arm around the boy and spoke loudly enough for the nearby family members to hear. "Change of plans, buddy. I just called an old friend." "Nathan," Molly started, but he held up a hand. "We're going to see another option. One I should have considered from the start." Gail's expression shifted to confusion. "Another option? Darling, I really don't think you'll find anything available." "We'll see." Nathan checked his watch. "Should be here soon." The next 40 minutes were excruciating. The Greer family continued their reunion around them. Children playing on the lawn, adults circulating with drinks and appetizers. Nathan and Taylor stood apart, waiting while Molly hovered between her family and them, clearly torn. Kendra Shaw approached. Her husband Leandro Gaines beside her. "Nathan. Molly says there's a problem with accommodations. I'm sure we can figure something out. Maybe Taylor could take a sofa." "In which house?" Nathan asked. Kendra glanced at her husband who shrugged. "Our place is pretty full. The kids have their cousins staying with them, right?" Nathan didn't elaborate. Then he heard it, the distant thrum of helicopter blades. The sound grew louder, and conversations on the lawn began to falter. People looked up, shading their eyes against the sun. The helicopter appeared over the tree line, a sleek black machine that spoke of serious money, and it descended toward the open lawn with practiced precision. "What on earth?" Gail began. The helicopter touched down 50 yards away, grass whipping in the rotor wash. Nathan felt Taylor's hand grip his arm again, but this time it wasn't in distress. It was in wonder. A man in a pilot's uniform stepped out, approached Nathan, and extended his hand. "Mr. Forbes?" Mr. ODM sent me. We're ready when you are. Nathan shook his hand. Give us 5 minutes to grab our bags. The lawn had gone completely silent. 66 Greers stood frozen, watching as Nathan and Taylor walked back to their car and retrieved their luggage. Molly hurried after them. Nathan, what is this? What's happening? Byron Odom is an old friend, Nathan said calmly, loading bags into the helicopter. We were roommates at MIT. He heard about our accommodation problem and offered us his place. Molly's eyes widened. Byron Odom? The Byron Odom? Nathan smiled. Is there more than one? Keith had approached, his swagger gone. Wait, you know Byron ODM? The shipping heir, the guy who just bought that tech company for $3 billion. We go way back, Nathan said. He turned to Taylor. Ready, buddy? Taylor's tears were gone, replaced by something like awe. Really? We're really doing this? We're really doing this. Nathan helped his son into the helicopter, then turned back to the assembled Greers. Gil had gone pale. He looked like he'd been punched. The extended family was pulling out phones, trying to process what they were witnessing. Molly, you coming? Nathan asked his wife. She looked at her mother, then at Nathan, and something in her expression shifted. She'd spent 15 years making excuses for her family, trying to bridge two worlds. But standing there watching them offer her son a tent while they toasted champagne in their estates, something broke. Yes, she said firmly. I'm coming. She climbed into the helicopter beside Taylor. Nathan followed, settling into the seat and pulling on the offered headset. Through the window, he could see Gail's mouth moving. Could see her reaching for her phone. The pilot lifted off smoothly and Nathan watched the Greer family reunion shrink below them. He saw Heath running for his car, saw other family members pulling out phones, saw Gail gesturing frantically. Where are we going? Taylor asked through the headset, his eyes wide. You'll see. Nathan replied, squeezing his son's hand. The flight took 20 minutes, carrying them north along the coast. Below, the Massachusetts shoreline stretched out in a patchwork of beaches and estates. Then the pilot banked toward a peninsula and Nathan saw it. A property that made the Greer family's rented estates look like beach cottages. The main house was a sprawling modern masterpiece. All glass and stone, positioned on a private point with 360 degrees of ocean views. There were guest houses, a tennis court, an infinity pool that seemed to merge with the Atlantic, and a private dock where a yacht was moored. The helicopter landed on a dedicated helipad near the main house. Byron Odom was waiting for them, looking exactly like the man Nathan remembered, but polished by 15 years of success. He wore casual linen like it was tailored, which it probably was, and his smile was genuine. Nathan Forbes, Byron pulled Nathan into a hug. 15 years and you still won't accept help without a crisis forcing your hand. I'm working on it, Nathan said. Byron turned to Taylor. And you must be the young man who's been denied basic hospitality by people who should know better. I'm Byron. Taylor shook his hand, still processing everything. Thank you for this, sir. Byron is fine, and don't thank me. Your dad saved my academic career at MIT more times than I can count. Byron looked at Molly. Mrs. Forbes, I've heard a lot about you over the years. All good things, I hope, Molly said weakly. Only the truth. Come on, let me show you around. The estate was extraordinary. The main house alone had 12 bedrooms, each with en-suite bathrooms and ocean views. Byron led them through rooms filled with art and elegant furniture, explained the amenities, a private chef, staff on call, access to the yacht, jet skis, a stocked library, a home theater. This place belonged to my grandfather, Byron explained. He bought it in the 60s. I've updated it, but the bones are the same. I don't use it as much as I should. Too busy with work. You're welcome to stay as long as you'd like. Taylor couldn't stop staring at everything. This is incredible. I'm glad you like it. Byron winked at Nathan. Your dad and I spent 4 years eating ramen and studying until 3 a.m. We always said if we ever made it, we'd remember what mattered. He kept his word. I'm still working on it. They settled into rooms in the main house. Not the guest quarters, Byron insisted, but the primary suites. Nathan's room had a balcony overlooking the ocean. Taylor's room had a telescope positioned to view the stars and the water. That evening, Byron's chef prepared dinner, fresh lobster, local vegetables, homemade bread. They ate on the terrace as the sun set over the water, and Nathan watched Taylor laugh at Byron's stories about their MIT days. Your dad once spent 72 hours straight solving a theoretical problem that our professor said was impossible, Byron said. Didn't sleep, barely ate. When he finally solved it, the professor accused him of cheating because no one could do that alone. What did you do? Taylor asked his father. I showed my work, Nathan said. All 70 pages of it. Byron raised his glass. Your dad is the most brilliant person I've ever known, and I've known a lot of smart people. Molly was quiet through dinner, and Nathan could see her processing everything, not just the estate, but the revelation of his past, the connections he'd never mentioned. After Taylor went to explore the library, she cornered Nathan on the terrace. Why didn't you ever tell me about Byron? She asked. About any of this? Because it wasn't mine to claim, Nathan said. Byron's success is his. I built what I have on my own. But you could have, Nathan, my family has been treating you like you're beneath them for 15 years. One mention of knowing Byron Odom would have shut them up. Would it have? Or would they just have seen me as someone who relied on his connections instead of his own work? Nathan turned to face her. Mole, I don't care what your family thinks of me. I never have, but I care what they do to Taylor. And tonight, they crossed the line. Molly's phone buzzed for the 20th time. She glanced at it and winced. My mother has called 47 times. You should answer, Nathan said. Put her on speaker. Molly hesitated, then took the call. Gail Greer's voice came through high and strained. Molly? Molly? Where are you? We've been trying to reach you for hours. We're at Byron's estate, Molly said. Byron's? You mean Byron ODM's estate? The one that was just on the news. Nathan leaned closer to the phone. What was on the news, Gail? There was a sharp intake of breath. Nathan, we didn't realize you knew Mr. Odom. If we had known. If you had known I had powerful friends, you would have treated my son better. Nathan's voice was soft, dangerous. That's your defense. No. No, of course not. It was a misunderstanding about the accommodations. These properties have strict rules. About occupancy limits. Yes, I heard that explanation. Interesting how those limits applied to everyone except the 66 other family members. Silence then. Nathan, this is ridiculous. You're being dramatic. We would have figured something out. You figured out champagne and catered appetizers. You figured out yacht excursions. You figured out how to make a 14-year-old boy feel like he didn't matter. Nathan's voice remained steady, controlled. But you know what? I figured something out, too. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done. Taylor and I are going to spend the week here enjoying Byron's hospitality. You and your family can enjoy your reunion. But what about our activities? The family dinners? The gala? Nathan almost laughed. You wanted us at the gala? The one you didn't book accommodations for Taylor to attend? Nathan, please. He hung up. Molly stared at him. That was brutal. It was necessary. Nathan looked at his wife. Really looked at her. Mole, I need you to understand something. I have never cared about impressing your family. Never. But I do care about protecting our son from learning that his worth is determined by other people's narrow, shallow measurements. I know you're right. I know you're right. Molly's voice broke. They're my family, Nathan. I keep thinking if I just try harder, if I can just make them see what? That we're good enough. That we deserve basic respect. Nathan took her hands. You can't make people value what they've decided is beneath them. And I'm tired of watching you try. The next morning, Nathan woke to find Byron on the terrace, coffee in hand, reading something on his tablet. He looked up when Nathan joined him. Your mother-in-law called my office 6 times yesterday. Byron said, my assistant is very confused. Sorry about that. Don't be. I'm enjoying this immensely. Byron handed Nathan coffee. I looked into the Greers last night. Old Boston money descended from shipping merchants, family trust worth about 40 million spread across various relatives. They sit on charity boards and country club committees. Very respectable and they're about to have a very bad day. Byron's smile was sharp. I made some calls. Turns out 3 of the estates they're renting. I know the owners. They're friends of friends. I had interesting conversations about deposit terms and cancellation clauses. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Byron, relax. I'm not kicking them out. I'm just making sure certain people know who they've been treating poorly. Byron leaned back. Also, the country club they're planning to visit. I'm on the board. So is my cousin. We're having lunch there tomorrow. I thought you and Taylor might join us. That's not necessary. Nathan, you spent 15 years refusing my help because you're proud and stubborn. Now you finally let me in. Don't make me waste this opportunity. Byron's expression softened. These people hurt your kid. Let me have a little fun with them. Taylor emerged then, still in pajamas, looking like he'd slept better than he had in weeks. Is that a yacht? He asked, staring at the dock. It is, Byron said. Want to take it out today? We could go whale watching. We're sailing. Or just cruise around and eat lobster rolls. Taylor looked at Nathan, who nodded. Whatever you want, buddy. Can we go whale watching? Really whale watching? Not like the tourist boats. Byron grinned. Already planned. We leave in an hour. They spent the day on the water, just the four of them and Byron's captain. The yacht was absurd. A 60-footer with multiple decks, a full galley, and more technology than Nathan's consulting firm. But Taylor didn't care about the luxury. He cared about the humpback whale they spotted breaching half a mile from the boat. About the pilot whale pod that swam alongside them. About the marine biologist Byron had hired to come along and answer Taylor's endless questions. Nathan watched his son lean over the railing, binoculars pressed to his face, and felt something loosen in his chest. This was what Taylor deserved, not tents and sofas and afterthought accommodations, but this joy, this belonging. That evening, Byron's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and laughed. It's Garrison Ashworth. He owns one of the estates your in-laws rented. Don't answer on my account, Nathan said. Byron answered anyway, putting it on speaker. Garrison, how's the island, Byron? I need to ask you something. Garrison Ashworth's voice was cultured. Careful. I have a family, the Greers, renting my property this week. They're claiming to be close friends of yours. Never heard of them. That's what I thought. They've been calling my property manager, asking for special accommodations, dropping your name. When I heard Nathan Forbes was staying at your estate, I wanted to verify. Nathan's my best friend from MIT. The Greers are his in-laws, and they've been treating him like garbage for 15 years. They forgot to book accommodations for his 14-year-old son at this family reunion. A long pause. They what? Forgot. Can you imagine? 67 family members in luxury rentals, and they forgot one child. That's unconscionable, isn't it? Byron's voice was pleasant, but Nathan heard the steel underneath. Nathan's too polite to make a fuss. Me? I'm making a fuss. They talked for a few more minutes. Byron catching up with his friend. Nathan listening in growing disbelief. When Byron hung up, he looked satisfied. Garrison's going to have a conversation with the Greers about their behavior. Very polite, very civil, but he's going to make it clear that their rental is contingent on them maintaining certain standards. Byron, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Byron's expression was serious now. Nathan, you were there for me when I had nothing to prove except my brain. You never cared about my family's money. You never asked me for anything, even when you were working 3 jobs and barely sleeping. You treated me like an equal when most people saw a checkbook. You were my friend. Exactly. And now I'm returning the favor. Byron stood. These people need to learn that who you know and what you've built matters more than what you inherited. It's a lesson I learned from you. The next day, Byron insisted they attend lunch at the Island Country Club. Nathan tried to refuse, but Molly, who'd been quiet since the phone call with her mother, convinced him. Let me do this, she said. Let me show them whose side I'm on. The country club was exactly what Nathan expected. White tablecloths, hushed conversations, walls lined with photos of past presidents and championship winners. Byron greeted the maitre by name and led them to a table on the terrace overlooking the golf course. They'd been seated for 10 minutes when Gail Greer arrived with Heath and Kendra along with several cousins and their spouses. They'd clearly heard Byron was dining at the club and had come to what? Apologize network. Nathan wasn't sure. Gail approached their table, her smile brittle. Byron Odom, what a pleasure to finally meet you. I'm Gail Greer, Molly's mother. Byron stood politely, but didn't extend his hand. Mrs. Greer, I understand there was a misunderstanding about accommodations. If we'd known Nathan had such distinguished connections. That's exactly the problem, Byron interrupted, his voice cutting. You should have treated Nathan and Taylor with respect because they're family, not because you thought they might know someone important. Gil's smile faltered. Heath tried to step forward. Mr. Odom, I think there's been some miscommunication. Has there? Byron's eyes were cold. Because from what I understand, you had accommodations for 66 family members, but somehow forgot a 14-year-old boy. That seems pretty clear to me. The properties had occupancy limits, Keith started. Please don't insult my intelligence. You had 3 estates with flexible room assignments. You simply chose not to make space for Taylor. Byron glanced at Taylor, who sat quietly beside Nathan, watching. How does that make you feel, Taylor? Knowing your extended family chose champagne and catered meals over ensuring you had a bed. Taylor swallowed hard, but met Byron's gaze. It hurt, but Dad says people who measure your worth by their convenience aren't worth impressing. Your dad's a smart man. Byron turned back to Gail. Mrs. Greer, I've made some calls since we met. Did you know Nathan turned down multiple six-figure job offers after MIT to build his own consulting firm? He could have taken the easy path, used connections, played the corporate game. Instead, he built something from nothing. That takes character. We've always respected Nathan's work. Gail began. Have you? Because I've heard 15 years of stories that suggest otherwise. Subtle digs, pointed questions, comments about their modest lifestyle. Byron's voice stayed level, but Nathan could see the anger underneath. Nathan Forbes is worth 10 of the people in this club. And if you can't see that, you don't deserve him in your family. The entire terrace had gone quiet. Conversations had stopped. Heads had turned. Gilunk greater than S face was white. Heath looked like he wanted to disappear. Kendra Shaw tried a different approach, addressing Molly. Sis, this is getting out of hand. We're family. We should be able to work this out. Molly looked at her sister for a long moment. You're right. We're family, which is why you should have made sure my son had somewhere to sleep before you worried about champagne selections. Molly, no. Molly's voice was firm, and Nathan saw his wife clearly for the first time in years. I've spent 15 years making excuses for you. For Mom, for all of you. I told myself you didn't mean it. That Nathan was too sensitive, that I just needed to try harder to make everyone get along. But you hurt my son. You made him feel worthless. And I'm done pretending that's acceptable. Gail reached for her daughter. Molly, darling, please. We're going to finish our lunch now. Molly said, you can go back to your reunion. The Greers left, their exit watched by the entire club. Nathan reached under the table and took Molly's hand. She squeezed back, her eyes wet, but her expression determined. Byron raised his wine glass. To family. The kind you choose, not the kind you're stuck with. They clinkied glasses and Nathan saw Taylor smile for the first time in days. A real smile, unguarded and bright. The next 2 days passed in a blur of activity. Byron seemed determined to show Taylor everything the island had to offer. They went deep-sea fishing, visited the Marine Biological Laboratory, took the yacht out for sunset cruises. Nathan found himself relaxing in ways he hadn't in years, watching his son come alive with curiosity and excitement, but he also knew the reckoning wasn't over. Byron had been making calls, quiet conversations with friends and business associates. Nathan didn't ask for details, but he noticed the way Byron would smile after certain conversations, the way he'd tap his tablet with satisfaction. On the 4th day, Molly's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. She answered hesitantly and Nathan watched her face change as she listened. Yes, I understand. No, we haven't. Yes, of course. Thank you for letting me know. She hung up and looked at Nathan with wide eyes. That was the rental company managing one of the estates. They're asking Mom's family to vacate early due to contractual violations. What kind of violations? Nathan asked, though he suspected he knew. Something about misrepresenting their connections and making inappropriate demands of the property management. Molly looked at Byron, who was studiously examining his coffee. Did you? I made a few phone calls, Byron said mildly. Mentioned that the Greers had been using my name without permission. Suggested that their behavior toward Nathan and Taylor might reflect poorly on any property owner who continued to host them. The owners reached their own conclusions. Byron. That's Molly stopped, then surprised Nathan by laughing. That's exactly what they deserve. The full scope of Byron's intervention became clear over the next day. The country club where the Greers had planned their gala dinner called to say there had been scheduling conflicts. The yacht company canceled their booked excursion due to maintenance issues. The golf reservations vanished. The restaurant reservations disappeared. One by one, the carefully planned activities of the Greer family reunion fell apart. Gail called Molly in a panic. Everything's being cancelled. The gala, the yacht, the golf. I don't understand what's happening. It's called consequences, Mom, Molly said, her voice calm. You humiliated a 14-year-old boy because you thought his father wasn't important enough to matter. Turns out he matters to people who actually have influence. This is ridiculous. We've spent thousands of dollars and we've spent 15 years being treated like second-class members of this family. Molly looked at Nathan as she spoke. I should have stood up to you years ago. Should have protected Nathan from your comments and your condescension. But I was afraid of losing you, losing the family. You're not losing us. We're here, are you? Because from where I'm standing, you only care now that you realize Nathan has connections. You didn't care when he was just a smart, hard-working man who loved your daughter and grandson. Molly's voice broke. You taught me to value the wrong things, Mom. And I'm done with that lesson. She hung up. That evening, Nathan found Molly on the terrace watching the sunset. He sat beside her, not speaking, Just being present. I'm sorry, Molly said finally, for all of it. For not defending you, for making excuses, for letting them treat us that way. You were caught in the middle, Nathan said. I never blamed you. You should have. She turned to him, tears on her face. You've been protecting me for 15 years, Nathan. Protecting me from seeing what my family really was. Never complaining, never making it my problem. And I let you, Mole. No, let me say this. She took his hands. You're the best man I know. You built a life, a career, a family, all on your own strength. You never needed my family's approval and you never pretended to. I'm the one who kept trying to force two worlds together that were never going to fit. What are you saying? I'm saying I choose you. I choose Taylor. I choose the life we've built. She smiled through her tears. And if my family can't respect that, if they can't see what I see when I look at you, then they're not my family anymore. Not in the ways that matter. Nathan pulled her close, feeling the weight of 15 years shift and settle into something new. I love you, Mole. I love you, too, and I'm going to spend the rest of our lives proving it. On the 6th day of what should have been the Greer family reunion, Nathan received a call from an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but Byron, who was teaching Taylor to sail, nodded toward the phone. Take it, Byron mouthed. Nathan answered, Hello, Mr. Forbes. This is Lawrence Greer, Molly's father. Nathan had met Larry Greer exactly twice in 15 years. Once at the wedding, once when Taylor was born. The man was a ghost in his own family, overshadowed by his wife's personality and preferences. Mr. Greer. Larry is fine. I am calling to apologize for my wife, for my children, for myself. His voice was heavy with something that sounded like shame. I've been watching this family tear itself apart this week and I realized something. We've been wrong about you, about what matters. Okay, Nathan said, not willing to give more than that. Gail comes from a world where appearances and connections mean everything. I thought marrying into that world would make me someone better. Instead, I became someone smaller. Larry cleared his throat. You're everything I should have been. Self-made, principled, present for your son, and we've spent 15 years trying to make you feel lesser because it was easier than examining our own failures. Nathan didn't respond, waiting. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to accept this apology, but I wanted you to know that at least one member of this family sees you clearly, sees what we've lost by not appreciating what we had. Larry paused. Taylor is a remarkable boy. He gets that from you. And if Molly has the sense, I hope she does. She'll hold on to you with everything she has. She does, Nathan said quietly. And I'm holding on to her, too. Good. That's good, Larry hesitated. For what it's worth, I'm having words with my wife and children. There will be changes. I can't promise there'll be enough, but there'll be something. After they hung up, Nathan stood on the terrace processing the conversation. Byron joined him, handing him a beer. Deathbed conversion? Byron asked. Something like that. Molly's father apologized. And how do you feel about that? Nathan thought about it. One apology doesn't erase 15 years, but it's a start. Maybe you're more forgiving than I'd be. Byron said, I'm not forgiving. I'm just tired of carrying anger. Nathan looked at his friend. Thank you for all of this. For giving Taylor a week he'll never forget. For showing Molly's family that their metrics don't define worth. Thank you for finally letting me help. Byron clinked his beer against Nathan's. And for the record, I'm not done. Your consulting firm. You're doing good work, but you're limiting yourself. Why? Because I don't want to owe anyone. What if you're not owing? What if we're partnering? Byron's eyes gleamed with the same look he'd had at MIT when he was working through a complex problem. I've been looking into sustainable technology solutions. Your expertise in adaptive systems would be perfect for some projects. I'm developing real work, Nathan. Not charity, not connections, a genuine partnership. Nathan felt the old instinct to refuse to maintain independence. But he thought about Taylor on the yacht, about Molly finally standing up to her family, about 15 years of pride that had accomplished what exactly? Tell me more, he said. They talked late into the night, Byron laying out projects that would challenge Nathan's skills. Nathan pushing back with questions and refinements. It felt like MIT again. Two minds working in tandem, building something neither could create alone. The next morning, their last full day at the estate, Byron gathered them all for breakfast on the terrace. I have a proposition, Byron announced. This estate sits empty most of the year. I'm here maybe 2 weeks annually. It seems like a waste. It's an incredible property, Molly said. It is, which is why I want you to use it whenever you want. Summers, weekends, holidays. Byron looked at Taylor. Especially you, kid. You should be able to study marine biology in an environment that feeds that interest. Byron, we can't. Nathan started. You can and you will. This isn't charity, Nathan. It's friendship. It's what friends do. Byron leaned forward. You gave me something at MIT that I'd never had before. Someone who saw me as just Byron, not as my family's heir. Someone who valued my mind over my money. That was priceless. Let me return the favor. Taylor looked at his father with pleading eyes. Nathan felt the last walls of his pride crumble. Okay, he said. Thank you. Good. Now, I have one more surprise. Byron stood. Follow me. He led them down to the dock where a smaller boat was moored. Not the yacht, but a beautiful 30-foot sailboat perfectly maintained. This was my grandfather's, Byron said. He taught me to sail on this boat. I want Taylor to have it. Byron. Nathan couldn't find words. I'm serious. It's too small for me to use regularly, but it's perfect for learning. Taylor showed real aptitude yesterday, and it'll give him a reason to keep visiting. Byron put his hand on Taylor's shoulder. If your dad says yes. Taylor's eyes were wide. Dad. Nathan looked at his son at the hope and excitement on his face and realized that sometimes accepting generosity wasn't weakness. Sometimes it was wisdom. Yes, Nathan said. Yes, we accept. Taylor threw his arms around Byron. Then Nathan, his joy impossible to contain. Molly was crying and Nathan pulled her close. The four of them standing on the dock as morning sun sparkled on the water. On their last evening, Byron insisted on a proper dinner. The full formal dining room, his chef preparing a multi-course meal, candles and wine in celebration. They dressed up. Taylor borrowing one of Byron's old blazers. Molly wearing a dress she'd packed for the Greer family gala she'd never attend. Over dessert, Byron raised his glass. To Nathan Forbes, the man who taught me that wealth without character is just numbers in an account. And to Taylor, who reminds me why it matters to stay grounded. And to Molly, who had the courage to choose her own family over her family's expectations. They toasted, the crystal ringing in the candlelight. Nathan's phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it and smiled. Molly, your mother wants to know if we'll attend the final family dinner tomorrow night. She says she has something important to say. Do you want to go? Molly asked. Nathan thought about it. He thought about 15 years of subtle warfare, about Taylor packing a small duffel bag, about the moment his son had been told to be grateful for a tent. He thought about Byron's friendship, about Molly's tears on the terrace, about Larry Greer's phone call. Yeah, he said finally. Let's go. But we go together and we go as equals. No more apologizing for who we are. Molly smiled. Together as equals. The next evening, they returned to the Greer family estates for the final dinner. The atmosphere was markedly different from their arrival. The champagne was gone, replaced by beer and simple wine. The catered meals had become potluck dishes. The planned gala had morphed into a casual cookout on the beach. The family gathered as Nathan, Molly, and Taylor arrived. This time in a car Byron had lent them, a Mercedes that made a quiet statement. Nathan saw the looks, the whispers, the way people watched them cross the lawn. Gail Greer stood at the center, but she wasn't holding court. She looked diminished, tired, and when she saw Nathan, something in her expression crumbled. Nathan, Molly, Taylor. She approached them slowly. Thank you for coming. The entire family had gathered, 66 people forming a loose circle. Nathan realized this wasn't going to be a private conversation. I owe you an apology, Gail said, her voice carrying across the lawn. I owe all of you an apology. What we did, what I orchestrated was cruel. It was beneath the standards I've always claimed to uphold, and it's cost us dearly. Heath stepped forward, his swagger completely gone. I was a dick. There's no other word for it. I let myself think that because I made money, I was worth more than people who made less. That's garbage thinking, and I'm sorry. Kendra spoke next. We got caught up in keeping up with each other, in maintaining appearances. We forgot what family actually means. One by one, family members spoke, some sincerely, others clearly uncomfortable, but trying. Nathan listened, his arm around Taylor, feeling his son lean into him. Finally, Larry Greer spoke. I've been a coward. I let my wife run this family's values into the ground because it was easier than standing up for what I knew was right. Nathan, you've been more of a man in your silence than I've been in 30 years of marriage. I'm sorry. The apologies hung in the air. Nathan felt Molly squeeze his hand, felt Taylor watching him, waiting to see what he would do. I accept your apologies, Nathan said finally. But accepting them doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean everything goes back to how it was. He looked at each family member in turn. Taylor is 14 years old. He's smart. He's kind. And he deserves to grow up knowing his worth isn't determined by how much money his father makes or what connections he has. If this family can respect that, can respect him, then we can move forward. But if not, we're done. We can, Gail said quietly. We will. And one more thing, Nathan's voice hardened. Molly is done being caught in the middle. Done making excuses for you. Done apologizing for me. She's my wife. She's Taylor's mother, and she's her own person. You'll treat her as all three with respect. Understood. Understood. Multiple voices echoed. The dinner that followed was awkward but genuine. People asked Taylor about his interests, listened to him talk about marine biology without condescension. Heath made an effort to talk to Nathan about his consulting work without comparing it to his own career. Kendra apologized to Molly privately for years of passive-aggressive comments. It wasn't perfect. It wouldn't erase 15 years, but it was something. As the evening wound down, Nathan found himself standing at the edge of the beach with Larry Greer, watching the sunset. My wife has spent 30 years building a family on foundation of sand, Larry said. Money, connections, appearances. It took watching it crumble in a week to realize what we'd lost along the way. What did you lose? Nathan asked. Authenticity, joy, the ability to value people for who they are rather than what they represent. Larry looked at Nathan. You never lost that. Even when we tried to grind it out of you, you held on. That takes strength I don't have. You found it this week. Maybe. Or maybe I just finally got tired of being small. Larry extended his hand. I hope you'll give us a chance to do better. Not for my sake, but for Molly's, for Taylor's. Nathan shook his hand. One day at a time. They drove back to Byron's estate that night. The three of them quiet in the car. Taylor fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the emotional weight of the week. Molly reached over and took Nathan's hand. Thank you, she said. For what? For being exactly who you are. For never compromising. For showing me what matters. She squeezed his fingers. And for loving me even when I didn't deserve it. You always deserved it, Mole. You just needed to believe it yourself. The next morning, they packed to leave. Byron met them on the terrace for coffee. His eyes tired but satisfied. So Byron said, think you'll come back? Try to keep us away, Nathan said. Taylor's already planning his sailing schedule. Good. And Nathan Byron set down his coffee. That partnership I mentioned, I'm serious about it. I've already had my lawyers draw up preliminary terms. Equal partnership, shared decision-making, your expertise, my resources, building something that actually matters. Nathan felt the last vestiges of his old resistance fade. Send me the documents. Let's do this. Byron grinned. Welcome back to the world, Nathan Forbes. They flew back on Byron's helicopter, watching Martha's Vineyard receded below them. Nathan saw the three Greer estates, saw the family members packing up their cars, preparing to return to their lives. He wondered if any of them would actually change or if this week would fade into family mythology. Another story to tell at future gatherings. But it didn't matter because he'd changed. Molly had changed. Taylor had learned a lesson about worth and dignity that would serve him for life. As Boston appeared on the horizon, Taylor leaned forward in his seat. Dad, he said through the headset. Can we really use the sailboat whenever we want? That's what Byron said. And we can go back to the estate. Anytime. Taylor was quiet for a moment. Then I'm glad everything happened the way it did. I mean, I wish Grandma Gail hadn't been mean. But if she hadn't, I wouldn't have gotten to spend a week with Byron. Wouldn't have learned to sail. Wouldn't have seen you stand up to them. Nathan turned to look at his son. You would have been fine sleeping in a tent, wouldn't you? You would have made the best of it. Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to. Taylor smiled, and it was the same open, genuine smile Nathan had seen on the yacht. I'm glad you called Byron. I'm glad you have friends who see how awesome you are. You're pretty awesome yourself, buddy. They landed at a private airfield outside Boston where their car was waiting. Byron had insisted on having it driven there. One final gesture of the week. As Nathan loaded their bags, Byron pulled him aside. That family of yours is going to try to change. Byron said, some of them might even succeed. But Nathan, don't let them take advantage of your forgiveness. Don't let them think this week means everything's forgotten. I won't. But I also can't spend the rest of my life fighting them. For Molly's sake, for Taylor's sake, I have to give them a chance to do better. Fair enough. Just remember, you don't owe them anything. You already gave them 15 years of patience. If they blow this chance, that's on them. Nathan hugged his friend. Thank you for everything. That's what brothers do, Byron said. Now go home, build your life, and call me more than once every 15 years. The drive home was peaceful. Molly dozed in the passenger seat. Taylor read his marine biology book in the back. And Nathan thought about the week that had just ended. Thought about his son's tears, about the helicopter landing, about standing in that country club and watching Byron dismantle the Greer's pretensions with simple truth. He thought about partnership offers and summer sailing and the weight of pride. He'd finally sat down. When they pulled into their driveway, their modest, comfortable, perfectly adequate house, Taylor jumped out and ran to the door, calling out that he wanted to video chat with Byron about sailing techniques. Molly stayed in the car with Nathan for a moment. Are we going to be okay? She asked. With my family? With everything? We're going to be better than okay, Nathan said. Because we're not defined by them anymore. We're not trying to fit into their world or prove anything to them. We're just us, and that's enough. That's more than enough. Molly leaned over and kissed him. I love you, Nathan Forbes. Thank you for not giving up on me. Never, he said. Inside, Nathan's phone buzzed with an email. The partnership documents from Byron's lawyers, comprehensive and generous, but also an email from Larry Greer with the subject line, moving forward. Nathan opened it. Nathan, I wanted to follow up on our conversation. I've had long talks with Gail and with our children. We're making changes, real ones, not just performative gestures for show. Heath is taking a sabbatical from work to reconsider his priorities. Kendra is in therapy dealing with her own issues around worth and validation. Gail as well, Gail is trying. I know you have no reason to believe this is real, but I wanted you to know that Taylor has an education fund waiting for him. Not from the family trust, from me personally. Money I've been setting aside for years because I knew Gail would never approve. It's his regardless of what happens between our families. Because he deserves it and because you shouldn't have to carry that burden alone. We lost 15 years being blind to what mattered. I don't expect to get them back, but I hope we can build something new, something better, Larry. Nathan read the email twice, then showed it to Molly. She cried and Nathan held her, understanding that some wounds took time to heal, that some bridges could be rebuilt even after burning. That night, after Taylor went to bed, Nathan stood in his home office looking at the consulting projects on his desk, the partnership documents from Byron, the email from Larry. He thought about the version of himself who'd refused help, who'd built everything alone, who'd taken pride in needing nothing from anyone. That man had been strong, but he'd also been alone. This new version, the one who accepted friendship, who let people see him clearly, who stood up not just for himself, but for his son, who'd finally let his wife choose sides without guilt. This version was stronger. Molly appeared in the doorway, coming to bed. Yeah, just thinking about how sometimes winning doesn't look like what you expected. Sometimes it's not about crushing your enemies or proving everyone wrong. Sometimes it's just about standing firm in who you are until the world adjusts around you. Molly smiled. Very philosophical. Also very you. That's what Taylor said, that I'm awesome. He's right. You are. She held out her hand. Come on, awesome man. Tomorrow you have a partnership to negotiate and a son who wants to plan 17 sailing trips. Nathan took her hand and followed her out of the office, turning off the light behind him. In the darkness, his phone lit up with one more message from Byron. Already missing you guys. Next summer at the estate, we'll make it annual tradition. Also, I have some ideas for projects that could really change things. Call me tomorrow. Nathan smiled and typed back, absolutely. And Byron, thanks for teaching me that letting people help isn't weakness. It's wisdom. The response came immediately. You taught me that first, Nathan. I'm just finally returning the favor. Nathan put his phone away and went to bed beside his wife in his modest house with his brilliant son asleep down the hall in a future that suddenly seemed brighter than any helicopter ride or ocean view estate. Because in the end, the Greers had tried to measure him by their metrics and found him lacking. But Byron, Taylor, and Molly, the people who actually mattered, measured him by the only metric that counted: character, integrity, love. And by that measure, Nathan Forbes was wealthy beyond imagination.
That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the stories. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.